Hope it is visible. ईडामहे देवागं ईडेन्यान् नमस्याम नमस्यान् यजाम यज्ञयान् ईडामहे देवागं ईडेन्यान् नमस्याम नमस्यान् यजाम यज्ञयान् नित्याः मनुष्या वा ईडेन्याः पितरो नमस्या देवा यज्ञया देवता एव तद्यथा भागं यजति। प्रभातं सर्वेभ्यः। अस्मिन् चतुर्थे विश्व वेद विज्ञान सम्मेलने वेदज्ञानात् लौकिकजीवनेपि कथं सौकर्यं भवितुमर्हति, धर्मार्थकामेष्वपि न केवलं मोक्षार्थं वेदाः सन्ति, एतद्विषये आधुनिककाले वेदाध्ययने कश्चन क्लेशः दृश्यते। केवलं मन्त्राः पठ्यन्ते, अपि तु अर्थज्ञानं न भवति, प्रायोगिकविज्ञानं नास्ति। एवं रूपेण अद्य वेदानां स्थितिः एवमस्ति। केवलं कश्चित् किञ्चित् रटति, अपि तु तस्य किमुच्यते तेन इति ज्ञानं नास्ति। अस्माभिः किञ्चित् एतद्विषये प्रारब्धमस्ति। वेदा नाम किम् इति किञ्चित् बोधनीयं भवति। वेदानां मन्त्रपठनकाले एव, गुरुकुले वा पाठशालायां वा वेदस्य अध्ययनं यत्र भवति, मन्त्राणाम् उच्चारणेन साकं तत्र किमुच्यते इति विषयेपि किञ्चित् वक्तव्यम्, अर्थविषयेपि किञ्चित् वक्तव्यम् इति अस्माकं धारणा। अतः अत्र पदद्वयम् उपयुक्तम् अस्माभिः। वेदविज्ञानम् इत्येकं, धार्मिकदृष्टिः इत्यन्यः। वेदाः धर्मस्य मूलं भवति। धर्मस्य मूलम् इति चेत् धर्मः कीदृशः इति ज्ञातव्यं। तद् अद्यत्वे न दृश्यते। अतः यदि पश्यामः, किञ्चित् केवलं कण्ठस्थीकरणे तत्र श्रद्धा भवति, न तु अर्थज्ञाने। अपि तु तद्यदा समीक्रियते, तत्र थियरी प्राक्टीस् इति यथा लोके उच्यते, तद्वत् केवलं रटनं मास्तु, वेदानाम् अर्थज्ञानमपि साकमेव भवतु। तदर्थम् अस्माभिः कश्चन मार्गः आदृतः। वेदानां रचनात्मक अध्ययनम् अपेक्षितं। वर्णेषु, पदेषु, वाक्येषु एवं मन्त्रेषु किमुच्यते, कथमुच्यते, तस्मात् किं प्रयोजनम् इत्यादिकमपि मन्त्रपाठात् साकमेव ज्ञातव्यं भवति। तत्र त्रयः विशिष्टाः अंशाः अस्माभिः चिन्तिताः। वेदानां लक्षणं पूर्वं ज्ञातव्यं। वेदानां किम् इति कश्चित् पृच्छति, अहं वेदं जानामि, वेदानां लक्षणं न जानामि इति बहवः वदन्ति। तथा न भवेत्। कश्चित् किञ्चित् वदति, ज्ञात्वैव वदेत्, किमुच्यते मया इति तेन ज्ञातव्यम्। तत्र लक्षणानि इति बहु लक्षणग्रन्थाः वेदेषु भवन्ति, प्रतिवेदेषु प्रतिशाखासु भवन्ति। अपि तु अद्यत्वे तेषाम् अध्ययनं व्यापिरूपेण न दृश्यते। प्रायः केचन कुर्वन्ति, अपि तु सर्वेषाम् एतद्विषये ज्ञानं नास्ति। एतत् सार्वत्रिकम् अवश्यं करणीयम्। द्वितीयं, वेदानाम् अर्थज्ञानं सुकरं नास्ति। तेषां कृते वेदानाम् अङ्गानि ज्ञातव्यानि भवन्ति। शिक्षा, व्याकरणं, छन्दः, निरुक्तः इत्यादि, तदपि साकमेव पाठनीयं भवति। एवम् अपेक्षितं। यदि कश्चित् गुरुकुले वेदाध्ययनं करोति, न केवलं मन्त्रस्य पाठः भवेत्, तस्य वेदलक्षणविषयेपि किञ्चित् कालं प्रतिदिनम् अस्मिन् विषयेपि किञ्चित् बोधनं भवेत्। एवमेव कश्चन कालः वेदाङ्गानां ज्ञानार्थम् एतदपि अपेक्षितं भवति। अनयोः लक्षणात् स्वरूपस्य संरक्षणं भवति। दोषाः न भवन्ति। वर्णे वा स्वरे वा विना दोषं सम्यक् कश्चित् उच्चारयितुं प्रभवति। अनन्तरं किमुच्चार्यते, तस्य कोऽर्थः, तस्य किं प्रयोजनम् इत्यपि अग्रे जानीयात्। तदर्थं वेदाङ्गानां ज्ञानम् अपेक्षितं। तृतीयं भवति वेदभाष्याणां विषये। अत्र को विचारः भवति, बहुत्र संवादादिकं भवति, प्रश्नोत्तरादिकं भवति, तत्त्वोपदेशः भवति। एवं बहुप्रकारेण वेदेषु विषयाः प्रतिपादिताः सन्ति। तेषां विषयेपि ज्ञानम् अध्ययनकाले एव। अष्टवर्षं ब्राह्मण उपनीत इति शास्त्रं वदति। अष्टवर्षात् 20 वर्षपर्यन्तं 12 वर्षाणि कश्चित् गुरुकुले वेदाध्ययनं कुर्यात् इत्यस्ति। तस्मिन्नेव समये सांग सशिरस्क वेदस्य अध्ययनं यदि समाप्यते तर्हि तेन समाजस्य स्वस्य विश्वस्यैव बहु उपकारः भवितुम् अर्हति। तादृशक्रमः यः आर्षेयकाले आसीत् तत् पुनः कथञ्चित् अस्माभिः आनेतव्यम् इत्यस्ति। एतदर्थम् अस्माभिः कश्चन क्रमः आधुनिकम् इत्यस्माभिरुच्यते। अद्यत्वे यद्भवति तत्र कश्चन अधिकः अंशः योजनीयः इति। अतः तत्र किं भविष्यति, अर्थज्ञानस्य विषये कथञ्चित् सौकर्यं कल्पनीयं। द्वितीयः अंशः वेदानां पठनं मध्ये मुद्रितपुस्तकेभ्यः भवति। मुद्रणे दोषः अस्ति चेत् कथं तस्य समीकरणं कर्तुं शक्यते? तर्हि पाण्डुलिपीनां पठनमपि तत् कौशलमपि वर्धनीयं भवति। इदानीमपि बहुत्र ग्रन्थालयेषु आकराः दृश्यन्ते, अपि तु प्रायः न कोऽपि तत्र गत्वा पठति। एतत् पूर्वमेव मुद्रितमस्ति, लभ्यते, कुतः मया पठनीयम् इति सामान्यतः चिन्ता अस्ति। तथा न चिन्तनीयं। केनचित् सम्यक् न मुद्रितं, सम्यक् न पठितं, तर्हि किं भविष्यति? अत एव अस्माभिरपि स्वयं तद्विषये कौशलम् आर्जनीयं भवति। सर्वे ग्रन्थाः न मुद्रिताः, बहवः ग्रन्थाः अमुद्रिताः सन्ति। तेषां विषये कः मुद्रणं करिष्यति? तदर्थं कौशलं कथं लप्स्यते? एतदर्थं वेदाध्ययनेन साकं पाण्डुलिपीनां मातृकानां पठनमपि पाठ शिक्षणीयं भवति। तदपि अस्माभिः इदानीं योजितमस्ति। तृतीयं भवति संरचनात्मकम् अध्ययनम् इति। वेदेषु ऋचः सन्ति, यजूंषि सन्ति, सामानि सन्ति। तेषां मध्येपि विभिन्नप्रकाराः भवन्ति, विभिन्नछन्दस्सु भवन्ति, विभिन्नविषयेषु भवन्ति, विनियोगेषु भवन्ति। जपे केचन उपयुज्यन्ते, होमे केचन उपयुज्यन्ते, गाने केचन उपयुज्यन्ते। एवं रूपेण बहुप्रकारक उपयोगाय बहुविध वेदमन्त्राणां कृते ज्ञानमपेक्षितम्। एतत् सर्वं किमर्थमस्ति, कुतः वैविध्यम्, एकैकस्मात् किं प्रयोजनम् इत्यपि ज्ञातव्यं भवति। मया तत्र आङ्ग्लभाषायां यद्युच्यते स्ट्रक्चरल् स्टडी इति वक्तुं शक्यते। Vedas have a structure at the character level, word level, sentence level and concept level. तर्हि येषां कृते कश्चन क्रमः मनसि सम्यक् निधेयः भवति। एकं कोष्टकं भवतु, you make a table out of the content, you make out a diagram, make out a map, mind map, concept map, and this is related to this, this is talking about that, that is said earlier, this is coming up later, they are related this way. एवं रूपेण वेदोक्त विषयाणां सम्यक् मनसि निधानाय कश्चन क्रमः संरचनात्मक अध्ययनम् इत्यस्माभिरुच्यते। एवं रूपेण प्रायोगिक अनुसन्धानमपि शक्यते। कैश्चित् मन्त्रैः केचन व्याधीनां कृतेपि परिहाराः उक्ताः सन्ति। तत् परीक्षितुं शक्यते। मम पितृचरणाः यावज्जीवम् औषधमेव न स्वीकृतवन्तः, अपि तु प्रसिद्धाः वैदिकाः आसन्। किमपि क्लेशः दृश्यते तदर्थं केन मन्त्रेण निवारणम् इति ज्ञात्वा केवलं मन्त्रेणैव ते स्वास्थ्यं संरक्षितवन्तः। आयुर्वेदेपि चरकेन उच्यते, आचार्यचरकः वक्ति, उत्तमः वैद्यः मन्त्रेण रोगस्य निवारणं करोति, मध्यमः वैद्यः पथ्येन साकम् औषधं ददाति, औषधमेव अवलम्बते अधमः वैद्यः इति तेन विभागः कृतो विद्यते। कस्य रोगस्य किं कारणं, तस्य निवारणं कस्मिन् मन्त्रे निहितम् इति यदि कस्यचित् सम्यक् ज्ञानमस्ति तर्हि तस्य आरोग्यं सम्यक् अवश्यं भविष्यति। एवं रूपेण क्रमेण अस्माभिः यदि पूर्वजैः यद्यत् साधितमासीत् तद्विषये रुचिः प्रदर्श्यते, तद्विषये प्रयत्नः प्रारभ्यते, प्रायः कदाचित् अस्माभिरपि तत्र गन्तुं शक्यं स्यात्। यावत् शक्यं तावत् कुर्मः तर्हि किमपि नास्ति इत्यतः अपेक्षया किञ्चित् यद् लभ्यते, समथिङ्ग् इस् बेटर् देन् नथिङ्ग्, एवं रूपेण अस्माभिः किञ्चित् अवश्यं प्रयत्नः विधेयः इत्यस्ति। अतः तत्र वेदेषु विभागादिकम् अत्र एतदेव अस्माभिः प्रदर्श्यते। मया ये ये मत्सविधे पठन्ति, वेदम् अध्ययनं कुर्वन्ति, तान् प्रति एतद् बोधयामि। भवद्भिः एतद् अवश्यं ज्ञातव्यम्, अत्र पदानां विच्छेदः एवं भवति, अर्थः एवं भवति, एतदेवं लिखितं विद्यते, तत् पठन्तु, तद्विषये कौशलं सम्पादयन्तु। तेन किं भविष्यति, आगामिनि काले कश्चित् एतद्विषये कुतूहली वा स्यात्, कुशली वा स्यात्, द्वेधा अपेक्षितं। पूर्वं कुतूहलम् अपेक्षितम्, एतत् मम इष्यते, अस्मात् मम प्रयोजनमस्ति इति पूर्वं चिन्तनीयम्। अनन्तरं कौशलं तस्मात् लभ्यते। सः कुतूहलिनः कुशलिनश्च अपेक्षिताः अस्माकं। तैः क्रमेण एषा विद्या पुनः प्राचीनवत् लोकोपकाराय भवितुमर्हति। झटिति अद्यैव न भविष्यति, अपि तु अद्य यदि प्रारभ्यते, काचित् पिपीलिका वर्तते, पिपीलिका समुद्रं गन्तुम् इच्छति, ant wants to reach the ocean, गच्छत् पिपीलिका पंक्तिः समुद्रमपि गच्छति इत्युच्यते। यदि अस्माभिः प्रयत्नः न क्रियते, केवलं मनोरथः अस्ति, न किमपि साध्यते। अगच्छन् वैनतेयोपि पदमेकं न गच्छति, गरुडोपि कुत्रचित् स्थितश्चेत् बहु वेगेन गन्तुं शक्नोति, अपि तु यदि प्रयत्नः नास्ति सः तत्रैव भविष्यति, पिपीलिका समुद्रं गमिष्यति। तद्वद् अस्माभिः अवश्यम् अद्य यदि प्रारम्भः क्रियते, प्रायः 10 वर्षेषु किञ्चित् समीचीनं युक्तम् अद्य अपेक्षया उपयुक्तम् अधिकम् अस्माभिः साधयितुं शक्यते। अद्यैव प्रारम्भणीयं, तत्र विलम्बः मास्तु इत्यर्थे एवम् अस्माभिः कश्चन क्रमः प्रारब्धः विद्यते। एवं विभिन्नलिपिषु मातृकाः लिखिताः दृश्यन्ते। व्याकरणस्य एवमस्ति, कल्पसूत्राणामस्ति, वेदेषु विभिन्नशाखानां विभिन्नप्रकारेण स्वरसंयोजनं कृतमस्ति, तत्सर्वं ज्ञातव्यं भवति। इदानीं कोशागारेषु विद्यते, न कोऽपि जानाति किमस्ति तत्र इति, कथं तस्य उपयोगः कर्तुं शक्यते, कः करिष्यति एतत् सर्वं। एतत् दायित्वं भवति। यः कश्चित् वेदाध्यायी भवति सः एवं चिन्तयेत्, अहं निमित्तं भवामि, किञ्चित् नूतनम् आविष्कर्तुम् अहं प्रयतिष्ये इति यदि कश्चित् सङ्कल्पं करोति, तदर्थम् इदानीं कश्चन मन्त्रः विद्यते। सामान्येन जनैः रोचनो रोचमानः शोभनः शोभमानः कल्याणः इति मन्त्रः उच्यते विवाहेषु। कल्याणः इति शब्दः अस्ति, कल्याणशब्दस्य विवाहः अर्थः इति जनाः सामान्य अद्यत्वे एवं प्रचारे विद्यते, अपि तु तत् कल्याणशब्दस्य विवाहः इति अर्थो नास्ति। एतत् सर्वं कालस्य गणनायां कश्चन अंशः, मुहूर्तस्य मुहूर्तः इत्यादि श्रुतिर्वक्ति। एवं रूपेण तत्र कालचक्रस्य विवरणं दत्तमस्ति वेदेषु। नवधा तत्र मण्डलाकारेण येषां योजनं यज्ञेषु भवति, काठकचयनम् इति भवति, तत्र काठक अग्निचयने येषां मन्त्राणां विनियोगः भवति। प्रत्येकस्य दिनस्य अहः कश्चित् पञ्चदशधा विभागं करोति, रात्रिमपि 15 विभागं करोति। तेषु मध्ये एकैकस्य मुहूर्तस्य अवान्तरविभागाः 15 भवन्ति, तेषाम् एकैकस्यापि नामानि दत्तानि, तेषां गुणाः सन्ति, तस्मिन् काले कृतं कार्यं तादृशफलं साधयति इत्यादि विद्यते। किन्तु केवलम् इदानीं रटनं प्रचलति। यदि एवं रूपेण वयं जानीमः, एकं टेबल् कृत्वा एकं डयाग्राम् लिखित्वा अस्मिन् एवम् उक्तमस्ति इति यदि मनसि सम्यक् निधीयते, तर्हि रटनं नापेक्षितं भवति, तस्य प्रयोजनम् अवश्यं भविष्यति। अत्र मया वामपार्श्वे मन्त्रः दत्तः, मन्त्रः सर्वैः पठ्यते, अपि तु दक्षिणपार्श्वे तत्र कश्चन गन्धर्वः अस्ति, काचित् अप्सराः भवति, तेषां सम्बन्धः, तेषां शक्तयः, तेन किञ्चित् फलम्। एवं रूपेण यदि अस्यैव मन्त्रस्य किमपि अधिकं न आयोजितम्, अपि तु तत्रस्थ विषयस्य ज्ञानं यदि भवति, एवं ज्ञातुं शक्यते। एवं रूपेण प्रत्येकस्य मन्त्रस्य मया इदानीं कार्यते। केचन इदानीम् एकैकस्य अक्षरस्य विषये 26 धर्माः वेदेषु उक्ताः। एव्री vowel has got 8 parameters: the place of origination of sound, the internal effort, external effort, then the kind of duration that it should have, hrasva, dirgha, pluta, etc. Then is it preceded, succeeded by vowels, consonants, etc. All these factors are explained for every letter in the Veda. This is called varnasara varnakrama. Every letter has got a vowel, a consonant, and an accent. Udatta, anudatta, swarita. So that is what we are coming to. In fact, one of the research that we have now taken up is to build a new kind of a system for computation itself. But we will have in the later session where we have a panel discussion. I have just tried to see, we conducted one course in the University of Science and Computer Science Department for a full semester to just see how this can be used, how Vedic knowledge can be used to measure something, to see that something becomes better than today's available systems, kind of. But then that has to be taken further. Tatra moolam vidyate. Prachinam yadasti tad vidyate. Sakshat tatna upakarakam. यदि वेदस्य पुस्तकमेव हार्ड डिस्क निष्कासयित्वा पुस्तकं तत्र निक्षिप्यते कार्यं न प्रचलति अस्य परिवर्तनम् अपेक्षितं भवति पुस्तके यन्निहितं तस्य बहिरानयनं यन्त्रे उपयोगी शैल्या परिवर्तनम् अपेक्षते तत्र येषां ज्ञानम् अपेक्षते षड्विंशत् धर्माः उक्ताः इत्युक्ते ध्वनिः स्थानं करणं प्रयत्नः देवता जातिः अङ्गं वर्णसंज्ञा एते अष्टौ गुणाः व्यञ्जनानां भवन्ति अचां ध्वन्यादींश्च यथाक्रमं प्रयत्नदेवयोर्मध्ये मात्राकालः प्रकीर्तितः एवं अचां vowels have 8 parameters hal all vyanjanas consonants have 8 parameters udattadi swaras have 10 gunas. In fact, there are many shakhas where you should show by hand the accent that you are actually speaking about, whether it is udatta, anudatta, swarita. Within that there are subdivisions. So hasta chalanam ityekam. Adhyetra anga vyatyasaha. You should be attentive for certain swaras. You can be relaxed for certain swaras. These are all mentioned. Tatra adhyetra angadi avastha, shajjadi swarakaranam, utpatti sthanam, samnya ityadeha. Tatra devata, jati, guna, rekha, nidarshanam. Which finger, which place the thumb should touch. There is a neurological connection between the brain and the nerve points in the hand, the right hand. So if we see some of the practitioners, some older generation people, they would be able to show that some Veda definitely has this. Madhyantara Shukla Veda definitely has this. Maybe Rigveda it has reduced, Yajurveda maybe it is not seen, but it is still necessary. It was there, Panini has mentioned. Where did we lose? When did we lose? And why? And how to reconstruct? Etadartham asmabhi tatra vicharah kriyate etad apekshitam asti. Yadi tasya shaktirasti avasyam shaktirasti apitu shaktihi upayogaya bhavet. One example I generally give. Somebody brings you a matchbox and asks you, is there fire in this? What will be your answer? This is generally called as aggipetti, teepetti, like that. If it had fire, the box would not have been there. And if it were not there, you will not use it for something. Then what is missing? The question is, it has to be rubbed against. So that part is the research that someone has to do. Vedas contain, they have a Shakti. But we have not been able to bring it out. There is an action required in between. There is a kind of prayoga that is required. That is missing today. So it is not that it is useless, but it is not effective today. That is also true. And something is missing. So that missing link we need to bring back. Etadatham asmabhi yantrika rupena shuddha swara matra anga varnasarabhuta varnakraman panchabi jnatum shakyate. To make a matrix out of this is possible. To understand the varieties is possible. Yet the effect is not possible unless someone pronounces the right way. Etadatham asmabhi vibhinna tatra vivaranam kinchite vakya rupena mastu kimapi koshtaka rupena bhavatu kimapi map rupena bhavatu yatha idanim panini vyakaranam sarvaihi jnayate tad bahu prasiddham asti bahu spashtam vidyate बहु गहनं विद्यते इति जानीमः तस्य प्रयोगः कुत्र कथं भवति अत्र बहूनां तत्र ऋग्वेदस्य विषये अस्माभिः प्रायः एक सम्पूर्ण अध्यायस्य तत्र 2,000 पदानि सन्ति एकैकस्य पदस्य कति सूत्राणि अपेक्षितानि कस्मात् सूत्रात् एतत् पदं निष्पद्यते इति प्रदर्शितमस्ति अत्र उषतः इत्येकं पदं गृहीत्वा प्रायः तत्र 30 सूत्राणि अपेक्षितानि तत्र अस्माभिरेवं कृतं विभिन्न वर्णेन अस्माभिः स्वराः प्रदर्श्यन्ते डिफरेंट कलर्स वी यूज उदात्त by particular color swarita another color anudatta by another color etc. Each one has individually some swara. When they are combined together by processes of the sandhi etc. there is a resultant color that is coming out. Now how this can be understood, one of the ways is to model this. we have used such a system, and this is being developed for the Ayurveda also now, so that when you recite, you also have in your mind, this is what I am saying, this is its meaning, this is what it conveys. So this kind of a knowledge has to be brought back in today's world. Earlier it was there maybe by practice or maybe by special inquiry. Today we don't have that environment. We don't have yajnas being performed. We don't have acharyas like having gurukulas on the river banks, etc. And then not worried about worldly things, only interested in knowledge. Such an environment we don't find today. So if we are able to somehow rebuild within our own limits, some small level even, that will go a long way in trying to create that interest, which will be helpful. So this is how for different, and we can also see when we have different processes adding something, a kind of a flow chart can be made out of this. Common flow charts and special cases, exceptions, etc. Then some decisions. At some points, yes, there is some multiple ways possible. So we have just tried to show in multiple cases how this can be applied. Tatra ekah granthaha ईदृशः विद्यते कश्चित् शतं वर्षात् पूर्वं मैसूर् नगरे बहु प्रसिद्धः विद्वान् आसीत् लक्ष्मीपुरं श्रीनिवासाचार्याः इति पण्डितरत्नं लक्ष्मीपुरं श्रीनिवासाचार्याः इति मैसूर् नगरे आसन् प्रथम राष्ट्रपतिः अस्माकं डाक्टर् राधाकृष्णन् यः आसीत् सः तस्य शिष्यः आसीत् तस्यापि एते आचार्याः तैः लक्ष्मीपुरं श्रीनिवासाचार्यैः एकं पुस्तकं लिखितमस्ति मानमेय रहस्य श्लोक वार्तिकम् इति नाम्ना सर्वशास्त्रेषु ये ये ज्ञान संबंधिनः विषयाः सन्ति ते सर्वम् एकत्र संकलिताः तैः 6,000 श्लोकेषु 6,194 shlokas he has written. It covers every theory that is produced in this country, any system, right from Charvakas onwards to different kinds of Vedantis. Every thinker in this country has an intellectual contribution to make, and he has listed all of those developments in this country and organized them well. He put them into 3 groups: Pramanas, first; Prameya, next; Prayojanam, third. These Pramanas, these sources of knowledge, lead you to this kind of a decision or theory or doctrine. This is helpful in real life for these things. That is the way he organized it. Dr. Radhakrishnan writes about that book. I am fortunate to have a teacher like him who had such a kind of both top-down as well as bottom-up approach to place anything, any theory, any topic into a proper kind of pigeonhole kind of a system. He says, this is related to this area. You will find about this in this book. These are the people who have talked about. There are 10 major thinkers in this area, and their contributions are this. This way he has tried to organize very, very systematically. And that book, unfortunately, is not read by many scholars even today. He himself published it from the Mysore Oriental Library. He was the curator of the library. He was the head of the Mimamsa department, etc. But today we have just tried to see, this is the course. This is the text on which we made a course for the MTech students at ISC. One of the vadas we took, he has organized this into about 125 concepts. And on each concept, what are the positions of different thinkers? And given a problem, how would each one of them approach? This is the way he has tried to apply. And this is something we found. We took a very interesting case. Adrishta is the word people use. And about Adrishta, he has written 73 slokas. He says different systems people have said. Some luck you call it as, fortune you call it as. Actually it means unseen. Adrishtam simply means unseen. Now what are all unseen? About this also, many people have taken, say, Atma is unseen, Paramatma is unseen, so many things. Punya is unseen, Papa is unseen, Paraloka is, all that is. He has tried to list out. There are at least 15 different schools of thought who have used this word Adrishta and in their own way. And he has tried to explain. This is their definition. And he does not pass any judgment. He has been very, very neutral about just the contribution, compiling them. He just says, if you ask me what is my theory is the compilation of all theories available. This is what he has tried to say. I am not for or against something, but this is only to chronicle the intellectual pursuit of this great country. Now that helps us in any given topic. You already have somebody put in enough efforts about that, and you know some results which are there as of today. Then you agree, disagree, you want to change, you want to follow, whatever, that is up to us. But that really gives a very, very good starting point for any serious research. And this kind of book is something we would like to recommend, to see that you first understand what has already been done in a field that you would like to do. And this is one of the very nice books. And he has also given a good glossary of all the quotations. For all these slokas, he has said, this is taken from this book in this place, and that he has given us as an index in the end. We have now got a website where we have put this text, put those referred texts also, linked them together. So now it is a usable kind of resource. Etadapi Vedadhyayabhi Nyayam. When I was learning Veda from my father, he taught me this also and said, when you tell a mantra, you need to know what does it say. And about that, what different people have said. Vedas say this, maybe Puranas have something else. Maybe in the later literature we find different thing. So this way, yeah, this is how we have tried to put, let us say, into a network form or a kind of graphic form. Okay, there is a topic called Adrishta, and someone believes there is God, someone does not believe there is God, then what happens to them, etc. This is the kind of way we just wanted to put together. So, Vedadhyayane Shakti Adhatum Shakyate Yadi Asmakam Ichha Vidyate Yadi Kutuhalamasti Yadi Kaushalamasti Tari Bahu Agre Netum Shakyate Bahava Tatra Yajnadi Samayeshu Upakaranani na Upayujyante Kevalam Rajuna Tatra Sarvam Tatra Manam Sarvam Kriyate. All measurement is done by a thread. And the thread is generally called Shulba. Shulba is the name for a car or a simple thread which alone has to be used. There is a simple reason. There is no Shuddhi for something other than earth or wood. This is what the Vedas have said. Either it should be made of wood or it should be earthen. Anything else, if it is metallic, only some metals can be purified and through certain things. Beyond that, we cannot use plastic, we cannot use ever silver, we cannot use steel kind of thing. Alloys, only certain cases, and these are the ways, these are their properties, etc. is mentioned. In yajnas, definitely we only use wooden utensils or earthen utensils. But within this, if you want to have a scale or something, you will not have a earthen scale. Maybe a metallic scale, a wooden scale is possible. How big will you have? So they use only a thread, and this is what is called Shulba Sutra. Now with this Shulba, we are now trying to make exact measurements, including you have the Agnis in the form of a circle, a square, and a semicircle. All three should have the same equal area. This is the requirement. Then how does somebody ensure this? Through a single thread. This is used even to this date. And those formulae later have become geometry, various other things. But now these are things. It uses, of course, let us say, to fix even direction. How do you know where is east? You go to a new place. You don't know where is east. You want to do Sandhya Vandana. You ask somebody where is east. Now, east is not in a particular place. East is a concept in general. East to someone can be west to somebody else. Now, the problem is for your use at the place where you are standing, yes, there should be some point called as east, or it's a reference. How do you fix this? So, in the Vedic text, we only have sun used as the reference in the daytime, and stars used in the night. Not moon, because there will be days when moon will not be visible. Stars are used in the nights, and sun is used in the daytime. What happens if it is cloudy, etc.? There are a number of such questions. For all of them, yes, there is a way given. This is sufficient, and this can be useful. So these are the kind of things I just tried to show. How does somebody fix east, west, north, south, etc.? Even the direction for your place. See, it is important that they have understood the movements of planets, the kinds of variations possible, and the equinoxes, etc. So at any given day, it may not be the same the next day or some other place. Now, this kind of knowledge is hidden in the mantra. And of course, there is one Professor R.N. Iyengar in Bangalore who has been working a lot on these areas, on the Vedanga Jyotisha. He has been able to prove a lot of such factors hidden in the Vedas. We are now trying to use such kind of recent development. Of course, we also have computational programs written for understanding, analyzing Vedic texts, and I've just tried to show programming of these into a good computational model. That is also possible. So we have just tried to see that different shakhas of different Vedas have lot of useful content but it is all hidden. It is shrouded in some kind of a mystery. Someone has to put in the efforts to see that they are unraveled. And no problem. Yeah, we have a lot of examples, no problem. I can show my website also. Yeah, one example I just want to show. This is something I have faced it many times in my life. To this date, I have not drunk tap water. We are not supposed to, and we still go by river water or well water or any natural water where I can go draw the water myself. Not even a borewell will do. Now, this problem has been an issue many times. Particularly, I have stopped going to Delhi because there is no well available in Delhi, maybe in the last 10, 15 years. I remember once the minister, then authority minister, had told me, I know about your system. I don't want to see that you get into trouble, but I fix a meeting at 3 o'clock. You finish your food, take the flight at 11 o'clock, come to Delhi, be there for 2 hours, go back for Sandhya, Bangalore back. Because, yes, I don't want to stop your, but why did they agree to this? There was an interesting case in IIT Kanpur. I was giving some training, maybe long ago, 30 years ago. I had this problem. Of course, they had arranged a place with for myself to cook with firewood and all that they had arranged. I don't eat outside. I don't even drink water outside. And I have my own requirement. But when somebody asked why, that is when it became interesting. Yes, there is a Vedic reason behind all this. And there, it is very, very elaborate. In fact, today also we have not completed this. One experiment of course that shows I carry a silver pot with me and it is to be cleaned with lime, etc. Then we have also seen the medical effect about this. There's a big research done, papers written, etc. This combination has this effect for this much period. And then that water is helpful. So Vedas, what do they talk about? Water alone. Water is one of the most explained concepts in the Vedas. But the words per se will not help us in any way. You hear the word, but does not mean anything to you. To understand what each word means, that is when we are now saying, when I teach some person, I want to also tell him this word has this significance because of this reason. And this is how you will have to understand this. That is where we have said Veda Lakshanas, Veda Angas, Veda Bhashyas are also taught along with the mantras. One example is, if someone has a draft in a place, then you would like to get rains, then there is a yaga called Kariri Ishti. Karirya Vrishtikamo Yajeta. Somebody wants to get good rainfall, and then he has to do this yajna, after which you will get rain. But this rain that is coming out through the yajna is not like some acid rain. This is very, very helpful. In fact, Andal, among the Tamil Alvars, he has mentioned, Vara Ulahinil Peididai. If the rainwater comes up, it should be helpful to everyone. Now, how do you know which water is helpful? That is when the Shruti says, water can kill a person. Water can make a person alive, even if it is semi-dead. This is what the Shruti says. For both, it is helpful. Apomaya pranaha is the general statement. The entire breathing system is based on water in the body. Prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana, all the five are 5 different functions of water inside the body, along with the air that goes inside as breath. Prana is one of the air functions. Apana is another, vyana is another, samana is another, udana is another. Each one has a function. If that is not there, this is not there. So Vedas have some experiments also. If udana vayu is not working, you will not be able to speak. See, speech is controlled by udana. Of the 5 types of the breath that you are taking, you are inhaling, exhaling. It also has one, prana is helpful for the blood circulation. So if the blood circulation has to be proper, it should be cleaned up, then prana is important. Apana is like the excretion happening from the body of the mala that has accumulated, that is brought out through apana. Vyana is to give the balance to your body. Udana is for speech. Samana is to just see, you understand with your context, your environment, where are you, what other things are there with you. The Twagindriya works through Samana. Now, every individual aspect contributed by water in the body through the air coming from outside and going outside. Now, in that case, the Shruti says, in fact, there is one actual experiment kind of thing on this done maybe about 100, 120 years ago. I have seen there is one Gazette notification during the Britishers' time in the year 1891, November 20th or something, they have just said, near a place around Madurai, there was a place called Tuvariman. Tuvariman is a small village. In that place, there was a great Vedic scholar. They had drought for maybe 3-4 years. There was no rains. And then he was asked, see, you know Vedas, and Vedas have said Karya can be done to get rain. Please do this for us. He agreed. And he conducted and it rained well. Now, the Gazette mentions one interesting point. The person who came to perform the yajna brought an umbrella with him. This is what it has mentioned. He was so confident that, okay, if I do this, while going back, I will be drenched. He was the only person who was not drenched that day. That is what it mentions. But he has shown that there are 8 properties for the rainwater it should have. There are 8 mantras used in that yaga. Each mantra is for one particular kind of the property of water that should get into that. Through this process, if something comes, that is the natural, healthy water. It is useful for all the living beings. Now, this is why this mantra is to be said. In fact, they gave a talk that day after the yajna. I have done this because I knew, and I was expecting at every step, this has happened, this has happened, this has happened, kind of thing. And so, because I was sure, I brought the umbrella. This is what he had mentioned. So, this is the kind of scholars we have had. He became the 40th head of the Ahobil Mutt later. He was at that time a Grahastha. Later on, he took sannyasa. He had, of course, the sakshatkara of the mantras. Now, such is the power of this kind of the mantra. But not all can do this, but everyone can do to a small extent. When you do Sandhya Vandana, when you say Apoishtamaya Bhavaha, it still has these powers in them. And this is something I want to at least, make people aware. Yes, this has a power. And we are, if we are able to slowly invoke that power and get practice to that, it will help us, and it will help others also. There are different words used in that Karya Ishti. The water has got different properties in different months of the year. There are 12 properties given. Every month has got a different kind of water's property. Water temperature will be different. Its properties because of sun rays, because of the air density, because of the time of the year. That is the reason Kala is called as a chakra, and it goes through a kind of cyclic variation in its properties. Mandasu, Bandhanasu, Potanasu, Nutanasu, Reshishu, Meshishu, Vashishu, Vishwabrutsu, Madhvishu, Kakuhasu, Shakvarishu, Shukrasu. These are the 12 words the Shruti uses. Every month, in the month of Chaitra, this should be the property. If it is Vaisakha, this should be Jyeshtha, Ashadha, etc. For every month, there is an associated property. Now, all of this is for a natural source of water. Don't pipe it, don't transport it. This is what the Shruti says. Water is not portable. It can be portable, yes, but you can't carry. What happens is you go to a different place, you carry from your previous place, it does not help you the same way it should do. So find in the place where you go a natural source. In fact, in IIT Kanpur, after that 1 week training, the director was very keen. Fine, you are leaving now. We want to know about why this niyama that you are trying to follow. Well, it took more than an hour. I just explained these are the ways. You take the water by yourself. This is what Uddhrita Paribhutabhihi Adbhihi Karyam Kurvita. This is what the Shruti says. You will do your daily practice as routine with water that is drawn by you and that is purified by sun's rays. Now, this is the reason that if it is held in a tank, if it is passing through a pipe or some system which is long away from your place, it will take days before that is stored and then you receive this. In between, there won't be sun's rays falling on it at all. In fact, there are very, very good instructions in the Vedas. You purify other things with water. Generally, there is a prokshana done. Adbhihi havigumshi praukshihi. All havis is purified by prokshana. Prokshana with water. How to purify water is the next question. Brahmavadino vadanti. Rishis among themselves discuss. Adbhihi havigumshi praukshihi. Kena apaha iti. To which, by which you can purify water, which purifies other things. The question is, you purify something, the impurity goes to water, then what happens to water's purity? This is the kind of question. When you wash, let's say, a cloth, You have a dirty cloth, put it into water, the dirt goes into water, cloth becomes clean, but water gets that thing. So this kind of transfer is possible. Then if water purifies other things, will it not get impure? How to purify water? This was the question Rishis asked. They said, water is purified by mantras. Simple water will not be sufficient to purify something. Punyaha vachanam. There is some mantra that is said. Along with that, the water is used. This mantra is to purify water. This water will not take impurity. This will be able to destroy the impurity. This is the way it is explained. So, which water can purify? So, this person had a question. You know the mantras. I give you tap water. You purify this with mantra. Then I told him, what can be purified also has, if it does not have a metallic content only, it is possible. If that contact is there, then remove that, this becomes useful. In fact, in Manusmriti, Manu gives a very good example. Ganga Jala is brought in a bag made of dog's skin. Dog's skin, you use it for making a bag, and in that you bring Ganga Jala. Will somebody take it? This is what he says. Shwadrutaucha yatha payaha. The problem is, sthana is dushta, not the vastu. Ganga Jala does not have a problem, but where is it kept is the problem. Now, this is the kind of, to what detail someone has to go. How does Veda help us is material properties, which has got what ability, sattva, rajas, tamas, etc. Within that shabda, svarsha, rupa, rasa, gandha, etc. All of this, which comes from where, how, and which combination. How can Veda talk about all this? Because Srishti comes from Veda. That is the only reason Veda is the single source. The entire universe is created from Veda. By uttering mantras only, Brahma creates. So the mantras, they can tell you, I told this mantra, this has this meaning, this power. And so the product that came out of this, Karanat, Karya Gunaha. So Karana contains this entire detail. Why does somebody study Vedas? Is the reason you will have the Karana Jnana. If Karana Jnana exists, then different kinds of Karyas can be made. If we know about mud, then all earthen things can be understood. You can use it for different purposes. You can use it in different forms. The Nama, Rupa, etc. can be changed. Guna has to come from the Karanas. So this is how, for every given use, every small item in the daily life, Vedas have first a question-answer kind of a situation, explaining the principle, then do this, you will benefit this way. This is how the Veda mantras are available. Only problem is that today we do not have that elaborate system of teaching. So we are interested in somehow reviving that, and trying to see if I can get 5, 10, 15 good interested students, and 10, 12 years, we can at least make them know about one shaka properly, thoroughly, and be of use to themselves and others. But this has to be started some way. We can't lose time. And today, of course, there are certain facilities available due to the modern development, like computers, like the search engines, like the programs, the various things. The data, if we have, processing it is possible. We have processing facilities today, the data is missing. So if the people with the knowledge of data can be associated, trained with the tools that are there, the processes that are available today, that is something we want to combine. And of course, Achamana, very simple function. Take water in your right hand, which will just be enough. There is one rekha called Masha rekha in the right hand. Up to that, it should be submerged in the water. See, the amount is told by Masha Magna Jalam Pibet. Of course, generally people say Masha also means Ulunda, the urad dal. So if you put urad dal, if it submerges, that's what. Masha does not mean the cereal there. It is the rekha that is there in the hand. If it is actually put in this form, then that should be covered by water. Now, this much of water alone has the effect. And for this, there is a story. In fact, Prahlada is mentioned to have found this in Vedas by name. Prahlada, Kayadhu's son, knew about this, and that is how Achamana has to be done, is mentioned. So there are number of such very, very intricate, important details about life, about making life happy and prosperous in the Vedas, but unfortunately, it is not looked at that way today. It is not looked at as a source of knowledge. Veda word itself means knowledge. So it's a source of knowledge. Unfortunately, that link we are lost. We are now wanting to somehow we can rebuild that link. You don't have to do anything. You have to only clear the covering of that. We are not bringing in the power into that. See, it is like a diamond fallen into a dirty place, or where you can't even see its luster. You are not bringing back its tejas into that. You are only removing the mala into that. Yatha na kriyate jyotsna mala prakshalanat manehe. This is what Vishnu Purana says. So you remove the dosha. Dosha prahanat na jnanam kriyate. Sadeva niyate vyaktim. It becomes abhivyakta. So all that we need to make is, that is hidden within us. Paramatma is within all of us. He is antaryami. But we have not realized. We are searching elsewhere. We are going in circle. If only we are able to see him within, that is why yoga, etc. is mentioned. So, Vedas, we are just wanting to bring back into this scheme. In fact, I just wanted to read out about 100 kinds of water through properties is mentioned in the Veda. Kupyabhya, well water has got a particular property. Kupya is in the kupa. Kulya is a canal. Water flowing in a canal has a different property than water stored in a well. But that well also should have its own source. It should also have some stress falling on it. Then, of course, it has its regeneration. Vikaryabhya, avatyabhya. Somebody just building a house for laying the foundation, he just digs out the mud. When you dig out the mud, you will get water also. Different places at different depths. That has a different kind of function. This is artificial, created for a purpose, and temporary. That is called avata. Avatya water has got a different kind of. Kanya, you for well, etc., you actually dig. Dig for water, dig for something else, get water. It also has its own differences. Hradya. Hrada is madu kind of thing. That is, even in the mountains, if you see on the rocks itself, there will be some trough, and within that water gets collected. Maybe rainwater, maybe natural water. But that is called Hrada. That has got a different property. Sudha is within marshy places when water is there. That marsh contributes certain properties. Sarasya, Saravara is Kalyani kind of thing. Saravara has got him. Veshanta is for recreational purposes, let us say in palaces, etc. They create to have, let us say, lotus or lily kind of thing. Now that is Veshanta. Then Palvala, these are kind of things. Sendamana, that which is flowing. Sthavara, that which is static. Even Kaveri, let us say, you build dams, then around that it becomes static. Water is flowing, somebody stops its flow, then it becomes static. Sendamana can become Sthavara, or some are Sthavaras alone. This is possible. Nadeyibhyaha. Nadis have different property if they join to the Eastern Ocean or the Western Ocean. There are two different words in Sanskrit. Nadi means that flowing water that goes to an easterly ocean. Kaveri is a Nadi, Ganga is a Nadi. Whereas Narmada is not a Nadi, it is called Nada. Sindhu is called Nada. Nada is something that joins to a westerly ocean. Whereas in the Eastern Ocean, something joins is called Nada Nadipati. Samudra is called as Nada Nadipati. Nada also joins Samudra, Nadi also joins, but different Samudras. Now, Nada has a different property, Nadi has a different property. Based on the descent itself, on the slope itself, water property changes. This is how the descriptions we find. In fact, my interest is to see that we want to collect samples of all these kinds of water from different places in the country and just try to record or try to see that we understand more. There is a description and there is a very precise kind of finding, locating them. Let us start doing this. But first thing is to know that this means this. This mantra is there, is being, yes, this refers to this. I tabulate this. Find, for example, next is very interesting. Adhyaswaha, it says water. Vahantibhyaha, then it is flowing. There are many qualifications given to that flow. Parivahantibhyaha, it just goes in circles. In some places, there is one place in Andhra, near Guntur district, there is a place called Majipadu. Somebody built a Gurukulam there. And he mentioned, as per Vastu Shastra, that is the best place in the country. If a river goes northwards during its course, then that place is good for Vedadhyana. And there it seems about 3 kilometers. It takes a detour and comes back. River is coming in, then it takes a direct turn and then comes back. Krishna has got at some point in one of its course about 3 kilometers like this. This is called Parivahanti. It has a normal course, then it changes its course, then maybe comes back to earlier thing. In Karnataka also we have Paschima Vahini near Srirangapatnam. The Kaveri, it actually goes eastwards. In a small place near Srirangapatnam, it goes westwards and then comes back. In fact, today also when people do the Aparakriya, when parents etc. pass away, they go and deposit their asthi in that place because it is considered very auspicious. The west flowing river kind of. So the direction also contributes to its property. Then Shigram Vahantibhya, Shibham Vahantibhya, slowly moving, fast moving, etc. Even these kinds of descriptions are given. Ugram Vahantibhya, Bhimam Vahantibhya. We have seen in a place called Ahobilam in Andhra, it's on Hillock. There we have a river called Bhavanashini. Ugram Vahanti, the sound itself is frightening kind of. Bhimam Vahanti, night times it becomes really difficult. I have seen once near Ramanathapuram in Tamil Nadu, Karnataka also, before reaching Tamil Nadu. Kaveri itself in a particular place where there are lots of rocks, etc. The sound itself is frightening. So this kind of, so these details that are found somewhere, not meant only for reciting, they are meant to be of use in real life. And if someone can slowly study with a purpose and try them, check them out, and find practical uses for them today. This will help in preservation even. See, instead of saying preserve ecology, give a reason. If you maintain this, you get this much of benefit. Instead of trying to run around in various ways to get the same benefit, you can get this through a natural way itself. Maintain nature as well as benefit from that. Provided, of course, we know the ancients, how they did, how the Maharishis went through this, etc. So, the idea was only to see different types of yajnas are mentioned in the Vedas. So at least research can be done if a knowledge about what we are saying is included into the scheme. Currently, we don't have a scheme which has this kind of a system. So this is our proposal. Anyway, thanks a lot. And I just want to mention, we have published about 15 to 20 books on this in various aspects. Most of them are in Sanskrit, of course. But we just brought one set of those books here, just to see if somebody would be interested. Just want to put it out on the stall outside. Till the evening, of course, people want to see, have a look at it. We have shown all this, the Vyakarana explanations, the details, etc. This is done for Rigveda. That is in Kannada language, as far as the translation goes. But rest of it is in Sanskrit, tables, etc. are in Sanskrit. Someone knows Sanskrit, of course, it's possible to follow all of this. Some, of course, are in Tamil and some are in English. Very little. I want to discourage use of other languages or translation simply because we lose the original meaning. And someone should be able to equip himself. See, somebody went to Germany and then asked somebody some direction. He said, no, I don't know what you are asking. Ask it in German. Then this person said, I don't know German. Then that person said, it is not my problem. If you don't know German, it's your problem. You are in Germany, you want to do the job. You should know. So similarly, you want to do a divine work, know the divine language. What is wrong about it? In fact, I know of a friend. He was from Karnataka because he was very much interested in Bankim Chandra Chatterjee's novel. He didn't know Bengali. So he read in the translation in Kannada. He was not happy. And he learned Bengali. Bengali he learned because he wanted to read a novel in Bengali. Good enough, no problem. Same case with Vedas also. Vedas contain so much of detail, it cannot be translated. Learn the language itself, Baba. You also have another benefit. You know one more language is one possibility. Second thing, you also get the hidden meanings in those kinds. So we should encourage Indian languages to be learned. Definitely, Indian languages all have a good relation from Sanskrit side. So that will help us even the other languages learn better. So in the native way, natural way, if we try to understand that the oldest of the guides, the texts that we have in the entire university, the Vedas, everyone accepts. Now that if we want to learn, why not we learn systematically, rigorously, the way it should be known? It will definitely benefit all of us. And with that, I conclude my talk. And people can join, participate in this kind of activity. We have our own YouTube channel, we have our website. And that, of course, it's very, very comprehensive. Last 30, maybe 40 years, I have put in more than 1,500 texts. All of them are searchable, all Vedas, with their bhashyas. And of course, all the Alvars, 4,000 songs and all Shastras, every possible Sanskrit text with their commentaries and fully searchable. Of course, I was the person initially who also built the ISKI standard, Unicode standard, etc., uses the Indian standard. So it is all searchable, including the swaras. Just Udatta, Anudatta alone can be searched. To that extent, we have made the tools available. We have also got I have a software built for even reading the palm leaf manuscript. We call it as Pandulipi Samshodhaka. This is also available in our website. So this is used for teaching. My classes generally are practical in the Vedic classes. They need to learn through our website. They can use this later on for their studies. Such as I write articles, I write all this. All comes from our own website. Took about 30, 40 years to build, but yes, it is still helpful to a good extent to at least see someone can appreciate the efforts of our ancestors. It's not my work. It is done by any number of rishis, munis, etc. And lots of acharyas who have brought it up to us. We owe it to them. We owe it to them as a sense of gratitude to know what they have done and how to benefit out of this. And they did not do it for any selfish purpose. It is entirely selfless for the entire universe to benefit. So if we can be the vehicle of taking that universal thought to all our fellow citizens, that will be the best tribute that we can pay to our masters. And I hope all of us do. Namah Paramarishibhya, Namah Paramarishibhya, Shubhamastu.
सादरं प्रणामाः आर्य। पाण्डुलिपि पठनात् आरभ्य पञ्चसारवर्णक्रमविवरणं, स्वरविवरणम्, आचारविधानानि, शुल्बसूत्रं तथा अपां वैविध्यपर्यन्तम् अनेकेषु वैदिकविषयेषु अस्माकम् अवगाहनं भूयात् इति सच्चिन्तनया सर्वं सुष्ठु प्रदर्शितम् आचार्यैः। पुनः धन्यवादाः महोदय। Now I take pleasure in inviting Shri Arun Kumar Upadhyay Mahodaya, former Director General of Police, Orissa, to felicitate Mananiya Acharya Ramanuja Mahodaya. Dhanyavadaha Mahodaya. So with that, we come to the end of this session. Now we are breaking for tea. We'll be back here ICA, ADB, LKY, School of Public Policy. He is currently the advisor to the government of Japan for the Ahmedabad-Mumbai bullet train project, and also distinguished professor at University of Tokyo. His topic is on food, habits, and humankind, as you all can see in the presentation. And this session is a bit different. He has made it a point to be interactive with the audience. You can all scan the QR code, which is going to be displayed in the presentation. Through that, you can also access his presentation from all your mobile devices. And also, there is another way where you can go to menti.com and use the code 29963137. It's either the QR code, or you can go to menti.com, MENTI, and use the code 29963137. I heartily welcome you, sir. So over to you.
I have been given 30 minutes, but I think we started 10 minutes late. So I should finish in 20 minutes from what I see. Because in Japan, on time is late. And people come early and then we finish on time. So I'll try to finish on time. My apologies, first of all, that I couldn't join from the beginning of this conference. Although I was in India and I received the invitation, I had other appointments in New Delhi, also for India's premier Mission Karma Yogi. Some of you may be familiar, which is now led by Dr. R. Balasubramaniam and his team. So I was working with them for a 2 weeks intense training program in New Delhi, which just ended on Friday. So the earliest I could come was only today. And so my apologies. And I realized that I missed so much. And I heard that right now there's another parallel Sadas going on, which is actually more exciting because all the speakers there I revere a lot, and I thought I should have chance to go there, but the situation is that I'm speaking in front of you. So let me try and make this interesting to you all. When Dr. Vaidya Subramaniam asked me to participate in this, he asked me to reflect on Japan, because most of our personal lives we have and lived in Japan, and professional knowledge is also inspired by what I learned in Japan. So he tried to ask me to compare India and Japan in the context of today's conference. In today's world, you know, technology is superior to all our mental knowledge in a way, because we all cannot live without searching. So I thought I will share my ideas using technology. First, please get the QR code. What it will do is you will actually get all the presentation immediately. And if you have finished that, when the lecture finishes, the slides also will be with you. But we will also be able to talk to each other. Instead of showing hands, you can do thumbs up. I see 21 thumbs up here. If everybody is able to scan it, it'll become 100 or so thumbs up. You can keep doing that. Let me go into the talk per se. This is the introduction to me. But in this campus and in this area, I'm more known as the son of Mr. Ishwaran, who was a teacher in ERI school. And many of his students are more accomplished and distinguished than I am. And I lived most of my time in the school days in this area in Tiruchirappalli, and also visited the Sanjaur campus many times. So it's great pleasure to be back here. And I'm very happy that this campus is hosting this IKS conference 4th session for this year. It so happened that when my wife and I got married, we had to go to Japan to continue our studies to do PhD. My wife is more accomplished than me. She did her PhD in the School of Medicine in cancer biology, and she is giving advice to people for as an oncologist. I studied in the School of Engineering, in civil engineering. But when we went to Japan, several things happened. So I'm going to share with you some kind of personal experiences, but in an academic context, what it means is sample size 2. So this is just empirical sample size 2. So please take it with that idea. This campus and Sastra University also has a very personal connection with Japan and my teacher. In India, we revere teachers. In Japan also, we do so. So my teacher who taught me is on this picture, Professor Hideo Nakamura. He and the chairman of this university, Mr. Sethuraman, had a personal connect, and it has continued across generations. As you can see, the successor of Professor Nakamura is Professor Miki in the middle of this right picture, and the current vice chancellor came to Japan earlier this year. So in Japan, it continues across generations. My professor is already 90 years old. So we were able to renew those connections. So the connection with Sastra University is also something very personal. Today's topic, I took the permission and the help of AI. So I consulted AI on what topics I could cover when we say India, Japan, what are the things that we should look at. So it gave me 4 topics: famous persons. This is not famous persons in each country. Famous persons who both India and Japan consider famous, and famous persons who are known to both Indians and Japanese. Let's see how good we are and how I used actually Microsoft Copilot, how good AI is supportive. Similarly, I looked at food habits, family life, and then mindset. So I hope in the connection of this topic, we'll go over each of these with some fun statistics also. So please keep your mobile phone on. Next slide onwards, you'll get some kind of a quiz. So you need to answer or click on it, and then we'll go over it. Do you know any of these people? Anybody looks? Pardon me? Sunita Williams, congratulations. Thank you very much. So what about the other faces there? Very good. Thank you very much. Masayoshi-san, then. No, okay. No, not yet. Okay, maybe the other 2 names you may not know, I thought. So that's why I put this slide. But this is what the Copilot suggested, that these are faces. There are also, of course, other faces. I asked for the top 3 names of 3 faces which will be very familiar in India and Japan. And it gave these names. Sorry for the small font. For India, it mentioned Sundar Pichai, Sunita Williams, you're right. Then it also mentioned, I don't know why, Kamala Harris. But for Japanese, it mentioned, yes, you're right, Masayoshi Son. But the other famous person is a skater, young skater. You know, in Japan, sports is given a lot of importance, and sports idols. It's happening in India also. Now with the Olympics, many of our young athletes are winning medals. So sports heroes are very, very popular, representing the country and also as a symbol for their country. Of course, we have many cricket heroes. Then the last person is actually the person who did this Ghibli. You may know in animation, it's very famous anime stories, and they recently won the Oscar awards for that. So Mr. Hayao Miyazaki. So let's now dive into the topic. I know we're going to have lunch after 1 p.m., but let's see, when you think of food, what comes to your mind? Try to answer it. You can type actually now, and it'll come on the screen when you type. I can try to hide the responses so that you're not influenced by what others are writing. So please type. Please think of a food which is known or very famous in India, but also think of it that, wow, it will be famous in Japan also. Similarly, think of a food which could be a Japanese food, but yeah, it's very popular in India, right? I don't want to give you tips. So take a few seconds. Everybody type. Now, for those of you who don't want to type, you can also give ranking of those that are already there. You can do a thumbs up or select the ones. So this is the way to be interactive. So young ones are also welcome. Well, chapati, sambar, roti, noodles, dosa, fish, biryani. Very interesting. Momos, sushi, pani puri, idli dosa, Well, it looks like rice, idli, dosa is competing for top. Dokla is there. So let me see now what, it's also giving the voting now. So you can vote on the choices that are given. Take some time to vote on the ones that you like. Okay, I'm going to close the voting now. So it looks like the most popular is rice dal, chapati, idli, sambar. So now you're warmed up to how we will be interacting. Throughout the session, you will have these choices to click and vote. Hope you'll enjoy it. So when I asked Copilot, this is what it gave. Basically, food is, of course, very, very culturally deeply embedded in all societies. But Japan has a very specific way, and I think which resonates the Indian way. In Indian way, making food, we pay more attention to the way the food is presented than just the taste of the food. So in Japan also, it's the same. When food is being presented, the way it's presented, the kind of cutlery used, the kind of vessels used, and the shapes of the vessels, each of those matter. For every dish, they'll have a particular type of vessel that needs to be used when you serve it, when you place it. So it's pretty similar. Like how we have, if it's a South Indian thali meal, it's not that you just eat it on a banana leaf, right? We all know where that curd pachadi must be, where that manga pachadi must be, where rice must be. We have a protocol. And for somebody else who doesn't know, they wouldn't understand it. But there is actually a very detailed protocol. And those who know it, they know how to do that. It's the same system. And like in India, of course, cuisines are so many. Indian food is very difficult to describe as one set of menu, right? Because of the various cuisines that we have, various regional varieties that we have. Same in Japan. They also have various varieties. By the way, many of them, the noodles that we think is Japanese food is actually not Japanese food. It is Chinese food. In Japan, they have 3 types of scripts when you write something. I'm a foreigner, right? So my name will be written in a particular script. A Japanese name will be written in a Japanese script. They also use the Chinese script, which we call as the Chinese character kanji. So there is a Japanese script, which is called hiragana, which is just like our Devanagari, Aiu, Yeu. But there is another script for it. It's a bit like the same Aiu, Yeu you can write in Tamil language or Malayalam or in Hindi, right? So in the same way, they would use the hiragana to mention Japanese words, which are originally Japanese. They would use another script called katakana, which is exclusively for borrowed words. It could be words, it's a bit like how we write in English for some words which we don't translate in our languages. So they will specifically mention that. So the noodle, it's called, very easy for us to remember, it's called ramen. But it's written in the katakana language because it is a borrowed dish. It is not a Japanese dish. So they are very particular that they don't write it in the Japanese script. So these are the important aspects. The very specific thing that is, Japanese also eat rice. And they eat a lot of rice. In fact, they start the morning with the rice. And before filter coffee is put, like in South India, Japanese mother will first press, the rice will be baked and cooked in the first thing in the morning. They start the day with the rice and they have breakfast rice, a bowl of rice. But very interestingly, in their food, rice is the last dish that is eaten, not the first dish. So when you eat rice, that means your meal has finished. So they will have the rice as the last part of the dish to eat, not like a dessert. The rice is the last dish they will eat. So when you go to a restaurant or somewhere, if rice is served, that means the meal is going to end. That's the understanding, which is very actually counterintuitive for us, right? Because we will first serve rice, you have to start eating. Of course, all other vegetables will be served. Once rice is served, you'll start eating. Their rice is the last dish to be served. So let me now come to distinct features. So we all know that our food habits and all of that is distinct for each country. So here I try to do compare and contrast. The spices we use, Japanese also use spices. In South India, we have what's called 6 types of taste, right? In Tamil, we call it, I only know Tamil, I don't know other languages to explain. 6 types of taste we call. Japanese also have those kind of 6 type of taste. In fact, they have the same taste that we have, like the fruit, which is both sweet and bitter, right? So they also have that plum. which is called the ume boshi, which is very famous. So it is a regular pickle that everybody will eat. So, and that flavor is very important for them. Now comes to cooking techniques. Here is where we are very different. I was telling one professor while coming here that in Japan, when you buy a tomato, it will look exactly spherical. People will wonder, how does tomato grow like that? It's not that we know that tomato grows in all shapes and sizes, but when they're going to sell it in the shop, they only select the spherical tomato, measure it with a vernier caliper, and then only serve that. They think that please don't cut it and chop it because it's so specially selected. So when we make like our dish, we squash the tomato and then cook it. They say, you destroyed this vegetable. We gave it to you. And each tomato will cost 100 rupees. Because for them, seeing the tomato, that color is as important as the taste of the tomato, right? So they value that. So that's what I'm coming to. The cooking techniques, the Japanese techniques are very, very subtle. The original shape and the look and color of the vegetables should not change. Because for them, the look is important until you consume it. So our way of making, some mixed vegetable is like zombie for them. They'll say, why are you wasting all these vegetables in this way? Another distinct difference is that we eat a lot of dairy products in the Indian cuisine. The Japanese don't eat so much dairy products. And this is something very interesting, and we will later come to it for health considerations. Seafood. Of course, in India also, people in the coastal areas eat seafood, but Japanese eat a variety of seafood. Particularly, they eat what is called the seaweed, which is highly nutrient in iodine. And some people say that that is one of the secrets of the longevity of Japanese people, because they eat that seaweed, dried seaweed, and they're perfected that art, and it has spread to various parts of the world. I don't know if in India we have started eating the seaweeds that is there. So it is a very popular dish. So let me jump into this. This is actually, I tried Copilot. So it said, these are the famous dishes that if you ask a Japanese, what is the Indian famous dish, they will give these words, Japanese think that every Indian eats some masala chicken or bitter chicken. They don't understand vegetarian food, unfortunately. And I think Indians know sushi, ramen, so that the Copilot gave. So let me now come into something more serious and interesting for us. So when you look at family, now please go back to your mobile phone. I would like you to rank these. Rank in this way. Each of these, do you think it's specific to Japanese or specific to Indian or both? So you can give number. 0 means it doesn't belong to any of these. It's not a quiz, it's just your view. 1 means it is specific to one country, Japan or India. 2 means 1 is India, 2 is Japan. Then 3 means both countries. So I see people already ticking. So let me hide it a little bit and see responses. Then wow. So if it is above 2, that means it's both. Many of us are saying that it belongs to both societies. So the concept of family is what makes society, right? And that's what we claim in our Vedic postulate, that Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam. Basically, we even think of the human society as one extended family. And this has resonated very well in Japan, it's true. So let me share what empirical evidence is. Family bonds are very, very strong in Japan and as in India. And more interestingly, they have a huge respect for elders. So in Japan, age is given a lot of respect, and particularly people who teach are given a lot of respects. So there is a respect for educators, and the people who are aged, they maintain a lot of restraint. Usually the people who are aged and educators do not go out in public to make statements and so on. People go to seek for their counsel. They are usually just doing things, and they do not go in public life unnecessarily, because they are very concerned about the maintaining the calm and peace. And so their words are always words of wisdom. People go ask for counsel and so on. They do not necessarily take positions. So in a TV program in Japan, when some big event happened, for example, the TV program is not just the news given. there will be, of course, the TV compare. And of course, there will be the protagonist. It could be a company or a politician or somebody, they will be called. But there will also be a professor who will be called. The professor will explain, the broader concepts of why this is happening and what this is happening, how people should look at it from a different lens, and they will draw on some very nice knowledge. So every program will be having an educational aspect to it, not just sharing news for news and not just giving opinions. And the professor's opinion will not be just his opinion or her opinion. It will be based on some work they have done, some empirical research or something they have done, and they will bring that knowledge, something they're working on. It's fascinating. For every event, there will be somebody that they can work on. There is a degree program on gardening in Japan. And you might be wondering, it's for people who didn't study well and it's gardening. No. After the COVID crisis, what happened? Many of the industries had to shut down, actually. And this is industry, Yamaha, which make motorcycles. They also make other things, right? Music equipments and so on. So the high-end engineers in Yamaha, they responded to climate change and they wanted to grow. As some of you who are agriculturists here would know, coffee can grow only in a particular temperature zone. That's why it is grown in India, it's grown in other parts of Africa. If you go to Starbucks, which is easy to explain, they will say our coffee comes from here, and there's a map actually they put on the screen which shows where it comes from. Now, as the earth is warming up, that line, that latitude is moving up. So some parts of Japan, you can grow coffee. But Japanese don't want to just grow the same coffee, which is only $1 a kilo. They want to grow $1,000 a kilo coffee. Like how wine is grown in Europe and other part, which is, a bottle is $1,000. They want to grow the high-tech coffee. So they are looking at how to get at every seed so perfectly that the exact taste will come. And so this Yamaha engineers, all of those people, they started to study gardening so they can do a very controlled gardening experiment. Coffee as a plant grows in the shadow. So it needs to be grown in a situation. It cannot have direct sunlight, I believe. So if some of you are better experts here, forgive me for simplifying it. So that was a TV program. That's what I'm explaining to you. So they brought this TV program. They got these coffee growers and a professor trying to explain. So they're looking at now the new market, which will open after 2030, where we'll be having Japanese-made coffee, which will be that special coffee, which maybe some of her will think that will compete with Kumbakonam coffee someday. So that's the kind of things that they do when they look at cultural aspects and bringing this. This is an example of how a professor can contribute. Now, let's look at the distinct features. So I looked at the same roles: family structure, gender roles, child rearing practices, and marriage traditions. Now, this is very, very interesting. Some of these are now changing. So I'm also a father and have children who are ready to get married, already married. So we understand all these as now with education, so many things have changed. The first thing is family structure. Extended family structure is now going away, right? We're all becoming nuclear families. Now, this is causing huge challenges. In Japan, they have a dictum called 80-50. Guess what 80-50 would be? In the family structure, what this means is in Japan, is that there is a 50-year-old man or woman who never got married until 50. And so no siblings, one child most of the time. So only the widowed mother or father is alive. So that person is 80 years old. So this mother, son, or mother, daughter, father, son, or father, daughter, they are living alone. This has become now a pattern. This 80-50 is a typical household in many places because of the situation that their child never got married and their child doesn't know where to live and has been living with the parents. And as time happened, one of the parents passed on. So the remaining mother or father is living with this 50-year-old. So this kind of situation is creating new challenges because that 50-year-old person now will become another 10 years later, that person will be completely alone, right? So there are many people who are alone completely, and Japan is doing research on this about why people are not getting children, why people are not able to live with their families. And they're studying this, and they're deeply studying actually Indian systems to understand this because they relate to our culture. So this is something we can look at. Similarly, roles of women in society. Now, this can be very difficult to discuss. Like in India, in most of the Asian countries, the women were the head of the household, but we maybe diminished it saying that they're just in charge of, we gave them a title, housewife, like that. But people need to work. In Japan, the big challenge is women who work, when they need to take time to come back to the home to raise children, they are unable to go back to workforce later. It's almost like, because Japanese system has the lifetime employment concept, it's very difficult to re-seek the same employment. And that is creating huge challenges. Again, the same 80-50 syndrome I mentioned, that's part of the reason why it became 80-50. So a professional woman would delay or not choose to get married because they don't want to give up their career. And so this happened because they're worried that if they step away, how will they come back? In Europe and other countries, they have created like maternal leave. They also have now a paternal leave. That means the father will come and take leave to take care of the child, whether the mother can continue to work. All these are concepts, but these are not easy to generalize because they're so personal and subjective. So that is a challenge, that the role of women in society. Now is a huge challenge that is coming, that when women need to be employed and want to be in the workforce, what are the sacrifices the household need to make? In India, if a woman is a professional, she would reach out to another 3 or 4 women who will help her household, right? We'll have somebody to cook, somebody to wash the dishes, somebody to take care of the children, all women actually. But those women are available because they need employment. And I don't know what those women are doing to their children and so on. Are they delegating or they're just letting go? In a country like Japan, that is not available. They would look at women from other countries. You know, some foreigner women will come. It could be from the Philippines, or it could be from Indonesia, it could be from China. That is what is now the pattern. We call it migrant labor. Women from other countries will come to take care of professional women's families, children, and so on. So it's, while we may be empowering women, we are still stuck with that. The same work that a mother or a woman has to do in the house has to be substituted by another lady, a woman person, right, from within their own society or somewhere else. In Japan, that kind of labor is not available from within the country, and it's very expensive also. So they are stuck with this problem, that how to look at the migrant workers and how to, they're trying to look at technology. If you can have a robot or you can have a camera which can support to allow a child to remain alone, and the mother can look at and monitor the child with a camera and all of those things. So we're trying to look at technology. And this is creating a huge challenge in the impact on the child. My wife is a medical doctor, as I told you. We also do some projects relating to children. I will share with you later how the impact on the next generation, that is the children, due to these challenges, that we don't have the elder person at home, a grandparent who can look at the grandchild. So we are looking at other ways of helping the young children, how they develop into new people. So this is, again, fun statistics from Copilot. It explained how in family systems, like we celebrate various functions like Diwali and Holi, Japanese also celebrate various systems. They also have, similar to our Pitru Paksha, they also have this Obon festival where they propitiate the ancestors. And every New Year day, they will go to the temple at 00 hours. They will go and visit the temple and try to hit the bell, the gong. Those kind of strict cultures they follow. Now, back to your devices again. So let's look at your score as to what is important. You can score on the x-axis for Japan, and you can score on the y-axis for India. Respect for tradition. This is now about human mind, what kind of things that we value. Individual liberty and work ethics. Please score here. Open your phone and score. It's a XY 2x2 matrix. Please score on it. Let me hide it for a time. Okay, many have scored. Wow, all are in quadrant 1. So we are saying respect for tradition. Work ethics is going down now. Okay, very nice. But if I do like this, we will know how we have voted for each, because that is showing the average scores. So in work ethics, we are saying it's not very important. In terms of individual liberty, we are saying it's not very important for India, but more important for Japan. Respect for tradition, we are saying it's important for both the cultures. Interesting. Community orientation, we say it's more important in India than it's in Japan. Okay, let me summarize. Thank you for that. I thought some numbers will go into really other quadrants, but it looks like we are all saying that they're all important for all the cultures. Not exactly so. Respect for tradition, yes, it is important for both the cultures. Community orientation is also, yes, important. But Japanese look at more of resilience. As you know, it's a disaster-prone country. So you're always ready to evacuate. In Japan, we are taught that at the doorstep of your home, you keep few bottles of water, few ready-to-eat food, which can be eaten immediately, and then something for your emergency, some things you keep, and they should be kept in so small a packet, like how when we board the plane, we are told, right, what should you do in the case of evacuation? Please don't take your bags, don't wear these shoes, which are sharp shoes, and ready to evacuate. Actually, we live like that in Japan. We are told that, and everybody will, if you're in an apartment, the apartment manager will come to check the drills that you have it indeed, not just say, I have it. They'll actually want to visibly see it, that you have it at the doorsteps. And it's a required list, because when a disaster like an earthquake or major disaster happens, we need to be able to evacuate. And they will show you where is the evacuation place. And you need to practice a drill that you can reach there within a few minutes, normally 2-minute countdown. They also show you, if you're on a tall building, how to climb down the stairs, not to take the elevator. And all need to do that drill. And in some workplaces, every month they will do the drill. And all people have to do the drill. At that time, any important work, nothing you have to drop, you have to come down. And they will have brownie point. If somebody remained and didn't respond, that means that person wouldn't have been saved, right, in a real disaster that happened. So they are so particular about resilience. And I'll come to that, why our Indian knowledge is going to be very important for the resilience. So when we look at distinct features, Japanese don't look at individual, they look at more of the collective performance. Similarly, when it comes to expression of emotion, in Japan, it's impolite to express your views, especially if you're dissenting views. We don't express it publicly, so people wait for occasions. Because there, when you meet and greet, it should be always positive. You don't try to disagree with people openly. And when it comes to work attitude, in Japan, work is worship, literally implemented there. So people give hours and hours of time. When I was young, I used to go home very early because my professor said, you're a foreign student and your wife is very young and she is studying, please go home early. So my neighbors will ask my wife, so today your husband is not very busy at work. Is he okay? Is there some problem at work? Because if you come back early, they think that you have some problem at work. That is the concept in Japan. When it comes to education, in Japan, the education is not education for the head. It is education for the hand. In Japan, if somebody is supervising somebody's work, it's an insult to the person. People are so skilled that they would work unsupervised. Because all the work, they are very proud that if they're supposed to do something, they do it so well that if somebody needs to supervise, that means they're not keeping up to the reputation. So everybody will do the work unsupervised. So this is something, it's shocking to me. So in Japan, when you learn to do something, you not only learn how to do it, you also learn how to avoid any mistake. Because that is the achievement of doing the work correctly. So if somebody comes to do even an errand, they will know how, they will ask all questions, what you have, what you don't have, and they'll bring all the tools necessary for your work environment. And then they will completely put it back in the same place as everything that was there. They will even take a photograph to show that before work started, how it was, after work finished, how it is, and you will not know actually somebody came and did the work. Now, this is the kind of skilled work that they train everybody. So someone who's higher up in the ladder in the organization has actually done from bottom up all of that. They don't suddenly come as supervisors. So we don't have like managerial class who just manage people and process. Everybody has done the work. And this culture is something that we need to learn. And in the spirit of Viksit Bharat, doing is not easy. And doing requires effort. It cannot be just taught. It has to be learned by our own effort. And that's what I learned. So let's look at mindset. In the interest of time, I'll summarize. We are deeply embedded in spirituality. I do not need to lecture here. There are greater stalwarts who know this. But in Japan, I think they practice the spirituality. And that is what I wanted to bring here in our awareness. We have a lot of knowledge. So when I meet Japanese people, they'll ask me, wow, India is the melting pot of all spiritual wisdom for all religious faiths, all walks of knowledge, and it's eternal. So how are you applying it in India? How are you using it for your economic work? How are you using it in education? Some of them, I don't have the answers. But I'll share with you through the personal experience of what I try to do at my work. Because this conference is about, I see Professor Ganti sitting there. So he must be wondering what this fellow is talking, some general knowledge. How we can work with Japan in the context of the work that India Knowledge System is doing and this conference. So I thought I'll ask some questions to you first, and then I will share some of the things that I'm doing, as I told you, sample size 2, my wife and I, what we have done. So please write your views. You can type. After a few people have typed, I will open the screen so we can see the responses. Wow, do the conference. Vedas translation, beautiful. Discipline, hands-on training, spread awareness, cultural exchange program, create devices to measure the effect of, that's very specific, Vedic mantras, so that we can apply them for common people, work ethics, by practice, tradition, promoting Indian values in the Japanese cities, towns, school level, very specific, collaborating with the Indian Institute for Vedic Exploration. Thank you. Cultural exchange program, translation of Vedas, common culture knowledge, self-discipline and devotion, doing sandwich research and education program. Well, thank you. These are very, very nice responses. And this is anonymous, but I'm happy to meet. Oh, there's also a specific one. Doing, yes, NCDs. Yes. So now we can actually select which one is more popular for us. So it will give an answer. So, Professor Ganti, I've done my homework for you. So you got the list of things that can be useful. Then I will be happy to help with you. So let me now come to sample size 2. When my wife and I were in the University of Tokyo, the research that my professor asked me to do, this was in 1987 to 1990. He tried to ask me to look at how environment, now it's so topical. At that time, nobody understood the concept of climate change. How environment should be included when we are building cities, when we are building infrastructure. You know, India is building a lot of infrastructure. So I tried to use the inspiration from the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 3 and looked at how when we respect and propitiate nature, the economy will develop, society will develop. So in Japan, it was also polluted in the 60s. Water cannot be drunk. The air was much worse than what New Delhi experiences in the month of December, but they cleaned it up all in 3 ways. Strict regulation, but not just only the strict regulation. They empowered technologies to really innovate and create. A lot of new ideas came up so that we can bring new ideas, what we call as startup ideas, startup in engineering, not just computer science. And then they monitored heavily. Because if you don't measure, we will not know. So there's a lot of data, longitudinal data, how it has improved. And we can now show, you know, if the noise level is higher, the value of the property or the rent of the property will be less, depending on the level of noise. So they have noise barriers, not because they want to reduce the noise. The rent will go down if the noise is there higher. So it is creating an economic value for doing what is good for environment. That was the research that we did at that time. And also looking at health impact. Now, this is another research that we did, because there are three things that is very important and it's very profound in Indian knowledge, right? One is causality, right? We try to show result of an action and then how we can get results. So the first one is about that. The next one is nowadays we have it on our phone, but at 30 years ago, this was not there, what we call as Google Map. So looking at the spatial way, if we understand in a spatial way, we understand things very differently. How to look at that? This picture is when a volcano erupted in the Philippines called the Mount Pinatubo in 1993. So one of the activities that I was asked to do was create a computer model to see how the mountain shape changed after the volcanic eruption and how we can simulate where the volcanic ash will flow. It's a scientific research, but it draws inspiration again from our knowledge. How we can look at the spatial way of looking at things. Let me share more details later. Then when I was in Singapore, I worked on water. And here the inspiration was our own Mantra Pushpam, where we look at the water cycle and the activities of the human being. There's one aspect which I'm still searching for, and I've asked many people to educate me on that. The link between water and stars. It comes in one of the verses of the Mantra Pushpam. How that is related. So here we try to argue that giving clean water and having proper toilets, now our country has made the declaration, is very important for country to prosper and also for politicians to get re-elected. So this was Singapore's story. The hypothesis is that every person, every leader who delivered drinking water in taps, like this bottled water is actually a symbol which shows that we are not able to deliver drinking water in taps. This is a symbol of that. So it's a shame to have such things in a conference, actually, because we are kind of declaring this will not happen. So we try to achieve that sooner and better. That means tap water is portable. And once tap water becomes portable, including in toilets, then hygiene will be so good because everybody will be using clean water. Not only just the wealthy people and those who can afford. All will have clean water. That is what nature gives. But to make it happen, we have to work on it. And that was the research that we did. And Sastra University was involved in it to create a visualization of Mantra Pushpam. And then we presented it at the Water Summit in Japan. Now comes the important aspect, which is very special to India, the concept of charity, philanthropy. You know, we cherish and we promote charity, and it's in our culture. This is an empirical research, which is very important for us to understand as a message. Charity is not that people giving money. And people don't give money to good ideas or some deserving, you know, somebody is poor, somebody needs help. People give money to good people who execute those ideas. So we all have to become the agents of change, that people are giving money, because I now work with many charitable organizations and international partners. They're looking for who is doing. They're not asking what you're doing. So the lesson I learned from that is it's like the iron rubbing with magnet. And this is where it goes to the role of a leader and the role of the teacher. We have to embed and inspire in the young minds the nature being helpful to society, giving back to society, and sharing what you have, including your knowledge and time. And as you grow wealthier, also share your wealth with these people. All these people are known to you in the screen. So let me end with this. As country is building infrastructure, as I told you, I'll try to connect Japan with India in the Indian knowledge system. I'm going to connect it in a new way, because the government I work with closely in India has committed to building infrastructure. We have metros in many cities. We are now building the bullet train for our country, and many, many more things need to be done. And this is a book that my professor wrote, who I introduced to you, Professor Nakamura, who taught me, and he has also come to Sastra. He wrote this book when he was 80 years old. He told me, Sitaram, I've taught so many lectures, but I realized that there are so many things I never had the time to teach. These are things that I learned outside my university through my experience. So he documented it in a book called Principles of Infrastructure, a 200-year journey of what Japan has done, learning from so many other countries and how they have built world-class infrastructure. I don't know how many of you have been to Japan. Oh, I see many hands. So his vision was how can we replicate that in other countries? So he tried to document it. So when I came across it, I requested him, can we translate that into English so that many more people can benefit from it? So it's now available as an e-learning course. This is a different QR code. It's free to download. You can learn. I request each of you to download the book and also read it, because this is how I feel culture and our knowledge needs to be. If we can activate and implement our Indian knowledge. To me, the inspiration is we are in this big town where great infrastructure has been built 1,000 years ago by the kings of Chola, right? That temple, it's an engineering marvel. Those dams, that's an engineering marvel. These are all civil engineering marvels. How did they do it? Why are we not able to do it now? What is it that we have forgotten? This is the question that my professor is asking in this, that we need to build. So this book is of interest to anybody. You don't need to be an engineer to read this book. They looked at how the arches in the bridges were done. That's why when you go to Europe and other places, it's so photogenic, so beautifully done. We also had that. We need to work on it, because maybe we are doing other things now, which some of them need to be destroyed because they are not fitting in with that nice things that 1,000 years ago we had. So infrastructure, to me, is very key, and I think we need to work a lot drawing on our knowledge. And the other aspect of infrastructure, as I told you, in Japan, is disaster. You know, they have a very deep concern about disaster. And here they connect to ancient knowledge. You know, for disasters, they happen once in 10 years, once in 50 years, once in 100 years. Some happen once in 1,000 years. Where do they go for that knowledge? You know, when this major disaster happened 15 years ago, where tsunami and earthquake happened, there was a temple record 1,000 years ago, which had said 1,000 years later it will happen. It's a bit like our almanac, you know, Panchan. Somebody had said this equation, 1,000 years later it will happen. There were 2 nuclear plants. One of them had taken that data into account. They designed it. Another one didn't take that into account because they thought, oh, it's 1,000 years only, it doesn't matter. That was the one that broke, the one that missed out that data. The one that took that data was fine. So this is what I want to ask humbly all of you. We have knowledge for millions of years data. We understand the planets, the universe. We have a message for the universe and the whole human society drawing from our knowledge. And we can work hand in hand with countries like Japan who deeply think about this, because disaster is the one that makes everybody uncomfortable. You know, in nice times, 10 years down the road, 100 years down the road, doesn't matter. But difficult times. If I know some 100-year event is going to happen, if it didn't happen for 50 years, the probability of the residual opportunity is much higher. If it didn't happen for 99 years, this year I'm in big trouble, right? So how can we draw on this knowledge? This is the interesting part I want to ask you. I'm going to end now with a question. Recently, I became a member of the Club of Rome, and they look at this. 50 years ago, they wrote this report called Limits to Growth, which challenged world systems of, you know, earning money, becoming wealthier, and so on, where we are depleting the resources and destroying the planet. So they challenged, are we not reaching the limits to growth? It's very, very easy for people with Indian origin to understand, because we understand the concept of life and birth, and then, you know, starting from the earth and going back with nothing in our hands. So we know that we have to give away. But other societies do not understand this, especially those who think that there's only one life. So it's going to be a challenge to explain this. And that's what I looked at. So the question that they are asking, and I like to ask you all to look at, is that they are wondering, for countries which are still not achieving the sustainable development goals like drinking water, health, and so on, is it that difficult? Because there's so much money is available. Actually, you can pay for it. Why we are not achieving it? Then the question is, this is a kind of a philosophical question. With so much technology available, I prepared these slides, as I told you, using AI. Should we need to go to school anymore? People can search and can find out everything. What is it that means there's a role of a teacher, right? There is something that a pedagogy where just knowledge on the internet is not going to be pleasing. The other and much bigger challenge that people are having is that people are able to live longer, but not healthier. Many of them have to live the last 10 or 15 years of their life in dilapidation, right? They are either in hospitals or care homes, declining mental, physical health. How to undo that? how to live such that you're living so healthily and then tuck, one day you go away. This is what our Vedic scriptures talk about, right? That we can exit so peacefully without having the last debilitating effect. Now, these are, I think, knowledge which are embedded only in our Indian knowledge system, which is of huge interest for the whole global society because they're paying huge costs for all of these things. So that brings us back to Shastra. I'm going to close now in 2 minutes. So universities are supposed to do all of this: learn, teach, do research, and add value to community. So I learned that education is not for a living, but it's for life. So when the vice chancellor of this university was in the Philippines studying at that time, he met a professor called Mike Luce, who was the minister also for education. So there we got an inspiration by looking at a professor in Thailand who was a NASA scientist, and he invented the landing gear that landed on Mars, but he was also deeply embedded in the Buddhist knowledge and meditation. He built a school where he could transform young children into leaders. We got inspired and built such a school. So when Mike Lewis met us, he asked, I'm running government schools and there's a huge budget. You're telling me you're running a school for free and no tuition fee is being charged? Because we try to show that education given free rather than education for fee has a different outcome. When we give education as a scholarship, it transforms the people into citizens who want to help society. But when we are giving education for a fee, it's just like a transaction in a market and they want to make more money and so on. So this brought this awareness that the purpose of education is transforming the personality, not just skilling them for a job. How do we do that? That's what this kind of conference is. We need to embed. I was very happy the students did Vidi Bhajana. That kind of training, that kind of experience will take them a long way in their journey of life, because that education is for life. And that kind of knowledge cannot happen just from books and so on. And this is where the philanthropic aspect comes. It's not that people giving money. When people study on scholarships, when people work with people who are philanthropists, then a transformation happens. Because the philanthropist is giving with the idea of getting some outcomes and results. And that can nurture the next generation leaders. So a very important role for us is to look at the next generation leaders. I see many young faces here. So 10 years down the road, I hope we will have a renewed rejuvenation of these aspects. So this is for the last slide. I found out that the journey from small I, which is individual, I spoke about two of us, sample size 2. How do we institutionalize our effort? Conferences can be made, people can give lecture, but we'll forget it. How to institutionalize, we need to look at next generation leaders, and for that we need a team effort. Here we have many scholars who have wide range of knowledge, science, technology, philosophy, and Indian culture. I hope we can put it together to really build these institutions. So let me stop here with the quote from no less than the father of our nation, that the world has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I took more time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for illuminating us on the intercultural perspectives between India and Japan. And also thank you for instilling us to rewire our brains about our education. As a fragment of the Vasudha, there is a saying in Sanskrit, Ayam nijaf paroveti ganana laghu chetasam udara charitanam tu vasudhaiva kutumbakam. So we look at Japan as a reflection of our own selves in certain aspects. And in some other aspects, we had some things to learn. So thank you for illuminating us on that. Now, with that note, may I humbly request Dr. Arvind C. Ranade, Director, National Innovation Foundation, India, to felicitate our speaker of the session. So our next session would be panel discussion on computing Bharatiya Drushti. I request all of you to be expecting a great panel discussion here. I invite all the members.
Thank you all for attending this conference, and I thank the organizers for this opportunity. So, namaste, vanakkam. So, the context of this conference was, again, we had a discussion with Kanti Murthy ji, how to sort of make this value added from a very sort of technological perspective. So, we said we'll do sort of one of the most impactful sort of areas of Western science and technology is the actual manifestation of all of Western science and its efforts in terms of usage of technology and artifacts we use. All the technology you see, the mobile phones you're using. You had an AI-based presentation just before this. And earlier in the day, we had a great presentation by Acharya Ramanujam on the whole Vedic aspects of what reality is. So there needs to be intersect between all of these. And there's a larger sort of challenge to us to understand how to even contextualize Bharatiya Gyanam, Indian knowledge systems. What does it even mean to contextualize? And what does it mean for this knowledge, these different kinds of knowledge, their origins, how do they interact? So interestingly, so the sort of the abstractions of computing give us a very, and technology gives a very rich platform to see how this interaction will work. Right? So we'll discuss all of these. So one of the sort of core themes, I'll just give you what we are planning to discuss on. We could probably not finish all of them today, but we'll have a pretty detailed position paper and sort of a vision for what Bharatiya computing is will be published by Ganti Murthyji's IKS division. A lot of efforts required here. So the basic themes are what exactly is computation, right? With respect to a lot of computation today is derived from the Western idea of mathematics, of theories, of theorems, all of that. So what is computing as we know it? And then Acharya Ramanujam ji here was part of something called as at CDAC, was part of the Heritage Computing Center, and they've done some 25 years of work on what Bharatiya computing actually means from a Vedic Sanskrit perspective. So before that, so all those who didn't attend the morning session, So we have Acharya Ramanujam ji, who has a background in traditional Veda, Divya Prabandham, and he is running his own institute on Vedic education last 30 years. He's also a trained engineer, academic, and a researcher in computing. And he's been building tools for Sanskrit-based Vedic computing for the last 30 years. And as part of his NGO, we're sort of also trying to extend the work that has been done to sort of bring it to the mainstream. One of the main first applications is actually pedagogy in Veda, which was a morning discussion. So other person next to him is Sri Madhusudan. So he is from the industry, around 35 years industry. He's based out of California. So he's closely involved in all these fundamental efforts of trying to build right from the notion of what programming is, what computation is. So and he has a background in AI for the last 3 decades. He's worked with a dozen startups and is currently involved in multiple initiatives. So what does actually computing mean in a very foundational way? Then we have Professor Gopinath, career academic, IIT Madras, Stanford, and a couple of decades in IIC. So he's got a recent book on sort of trying to grapple with this problem. So he called it the computing meme. So I'll sort of show you, this is the book that's come up with. It sort of tries to say what did we really have computing? What is our Bharatiya Jnana itself from the computing drishti, right? So we'll have those presentations from Gopinath ji and from Ramanujam. So then once that is done, so if we have time and if sort of the end of the discussion, we sort of also, given that we have mainstreaming of IKS, is it time that we even need to redefine what computing is from our drishti, right? Since a significant component of IKS is the entire sukshma nature of the world that we look at. So what does Vedic computing actually really mean? So all of these we'll try to examine. So we'll start with Gopinath ji, so who can sort of give a presentation on his take on the entire historical evolution and what it actually means.
Vanakkam. Ellarigu namaskara. Sarvebhyaha namaskara. So let me get started. Again, I want to thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to speak in front of you. So the topic of discussion today is Bharatiya Ganita Drushti. And I'm going to argue that in India, we had a notion what is called Druk Ganita Aikya. Druk is to see, Ganita is to compute, Aikya is the concordance, means the unity. So this particular idea has been there in Indian astronomical circles, and I'm pretty sure in many other areas if you look closely enough. So alternatively, in English, you can call it computational thinking in India. And, or if you want to push it a bit, you can even call it current models of AI and how are they connected with the Indian perspectives. Because of lack of time, I will just touch upon a few points in each of the slides. If you're interested, you can catch me later. We can talk a bit more. I think one of the things which is interesting about Indian tradition is that it's often quite different from other traditions, dominant traditions sometimes, whether it's in food, dress, or music, etc. And it opens alternate viewpoints. And people who have looked at the Indian point of view have benefited enormously. A good example is Schrodinger, who happened to be was exposed to Vedantic ideas when he was a youngster. When he was doing the physics, he found that quantum mechanics, he found that the Vedantic ideas actually made some sense to him. Okay, so again, as people say, prepared mind, okay, gives you flexibility in terms of understanding things. And I think that if you're familiar with Indian perspectives, I think it also will give you a lot of additional possibilities which you might not be aware of. And I think in computer science and AI, I believe that this is also the case. And interesting, there is a very nice shloka, observation in Indian tradition, and by a very ancient astronomer, about 700 BC, for example, approximately. Example, Buddha Garga, he says, Darshanam Ganitam Chaiva Yugapat Yoga Sadakam. That means observation and calculation, when they go together, is effective. Okay, so you can see that from the long time back, at least close to 3,000 years back, this understanding that you need to ensure that your models, because you see something, you deduce something from it through some models, you do some modelization, and then from that you figure out whether your model is accurate by checking with observations. Okay, so that there is some kind of a loop inside. Okay, there's always something you keep on doing it till you get it right in some sense. And this particular perspective has been there for quite some time. Okay, essentially you can see that Indian perspectives are often cyclical. Okay, and the reason why I point this as an important issue is that if you look at current AI kind of models, for example, there's something called reinforcement learning, where you have some kind of reward structures. If somebody gets a reward, then they benefit and they keep on trying to maximize the returns. But in Indian concept, for example, when you think about ideas like moksha, etc., what is the idea of a moksha? The fact that you become extinct. So the idea of reward itself is sort of problematic. Okay, I hope you get the point, right? Basic thing is that if you look at the current economic or other kind of models, if you get a benefit, you tend to, let us say, use that way of thinking that got you there to use it more often or something like that. In some sense, the reward structures help you to move in a particular direction. But the Indian perspective, for example, moksha, etc., is that you have to essentially find a way of exiting this universe in some sense. Okay, you can see that there is a fundamental problem there itself. I can just give you examples of this kind all over the place if you study Indian thinking. Again, Indian thinking emphasized computational aspects. I'll just mention two things. Computational model of, let's see. For example, computational model of Sanskrit grammar is very well known. Similarly, interpolation techniques are extensively used in astronomy, for example. And there are many other examples. Since lack of time, I will not go through many of them. Okay. And it turns out that there are, of course, many multiple perspectives available if you want to understand what reality is all about. You can have computational aspects, axiomatic aspects. You can be constructivist compared to other models. You can have binary or multivariate logic, discrete or continuous, quantum, classical, so many possibilities. I would argue that the Indian model is closer to the cyclic kind of perceptions. Okay? So, for example, you can have a model which is close to what is called optimizing. Basically, you have a certain strong notion of reasoning models, and using computation, you can come to certain understandings with an optimization perspective, which is closer to, it turns out, it is, some people call it algorithmic, some people call it mathematical, some people call it axiomatic. And this is closer to an open loop model. The Indian model is closer to a cyclic model or network or contextual models. It is closer to what I would call as a satisficing model. Basically, certainly use reasoning like here also, but there is more of computation and you're trying to minimize some model of error, closer to satisficing, okay? So this, I believe, is the heart of some of the Indian kind of perspectives. Of course, we use this also, but I think the emphasis in Indians is closer to this model. As I mentioned, you need both of them, and each can be embedded in the other. Okay. And this particular perspective was emphasized by one interesting work by Professor Ruddam Narasimha, Indian Institute of Science. He has written a paper called Axiomatism and Computational Positivism. And it basically, for example, it says that a philosophy that may be called computational positivism, whose goal is to make computation agree with observation, appears to have been characteristic of Indian and apparently Babylonian astronomy. And this is somewhat different from other models. For example, if you look at Platonic thinking, idea is that you already know everything, just a question of asking you the right questions and you elicit the right information out of you. That is Socratic kind of model of thinking. Okay? And essentially, in some sense, the engagement in the real world is not that important because everything is known inside. It's sort of innate thinking. You already have innate knowledge and you basically have to stimulate that innate knowledge and you get the answers out. And this is completely different from, for example, someone like, for example, the Indian thinking, or even, for example, physicists like Feynman, he basically says that there are two ways of doing physics, the Greek from first principles or axioms, and the Babylonian, relating one thing to another, basically the network or the contextual kind of understandings. And he says that he firmly says, I'm a Babylonian. He's not a Greek kind of a thinker. That is, derive everything from first principles, axioms. And he also says, I have no preconception about what nature is like or ought to be. Basically, it takes the world as it comes and tries to figure out what has to be deduced from it, rather than say that I have these principles from which I deduce everything. Okay, you can see this is two different kinds of thinking, And I think the Indian perspective is closer to this kind of model. And essentially, you will see that the Indian perspective is that the reality cannot be captured by a finite set of atomic propositions of this kind. And for example, Charvakas say that if you believe that the world is, defined by let's say finite set of things, they basically say that that's not really true. Anytime you say something, you can always find a confounder which basically invalidates what you're thinking. Okay, so that is a Charvakas position. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, my apologies. Okay, so basically what from very early on, for example, people like Charvaka, for example, they will say that if you say that some statement is true, you can always find something which confounds that statement and makes that particular statement invalid in some certain context. So Charvakas, for example, talk about, that's why they, for example, they don't believe in induction as a pramana. Okay, they are very doubtful of that kind of perspective. Okay. So in a sense, what you can see is that you have reality, you need to go through a certain modeling phase. Once you have modeled the system, you have a certain computational or mathematical implications of that model, and check finally if that implications correspond with reality. If that doesn't correspond with reality, then you have to change the model again. In a sense, it's sort of a circular model. And this is what basically what Radham Narasimha calls it as computational positivism. And in Indian thinking, this is basically Dhruv Ganikaitya, basically observation, computation, the unity of these two things, Dhruv Ganikaitya. And this is some principle that is there in many astronomical works and in other areas also. For example, Bhaskara, he has got if you look at his work, you'll see this thing. I mentioned already Vruddha Garga, various other people, Brahmagupta, all those people also talk about this. Okay? And again, I should mention there's still a simple model, because once you, for example, in quantum kind of systems, observation and let us say looking at whether observation and reality, basically there is some kind of the minute of the act of observing itself changes the reality. Okay, so in a sense this is an attempt at what could be the issue, because there are deeper models required. I'm just mentioning this as a starting point. Okay? And in a sense there is a distinction between AI and CS here also. In CS it's closer to the first model, and AI is closer to the second model. Okay, to explain that, let me take some words you might have heard about. For example, there are various components of what people often call artificial intelligence. And for example, one component is machine learning. And people often see that if you look at it closely, it's closer to a linear model. Basically, you have some input, somebody figures out what the features are. Based on the features, you do some classification and outcomes, whether this is a car or this is an elephant or whatever. Okay, so this is basically a linear kind of model. The deep learning model that has come later is mostly a circular kind of model during training. Basically, what it means is that you don't sit and say what are the features of the particular thing. For example, in this machine learning kind of model, you have to say that a car has got 4 wheels, it has got a dashboard, whatever it is. Okay, you have to keep telling the system that is human derived. Okay, you have to tell it, and then you do some classification. Whereas in the deep learning kind of stuff, you basically don't have to tell the features; it can actually figure it out by itself. Okay, and that the way it happens is by it starts in a random state in some sense, and then keeps on given some random understanding of what this is. Look at this particular, let's say architecture or whatever it is, and see whether you are giving the right answer or not. If it something wrong with it, you go and fix it again, this particular state of what you understood it to be, and keep on doing it till you get it right. Okay, so in a sense, it's a more deeply circular kind of model. Okay, okay. So I think because of lack of time, I think I'll skip all these things. And it turns out that if you look at AI, there are many components of philosophical ideas in it. For example, you can have logic and therefore predicates. It turns out that the Indian people have worked on this. For example, Katyayana, Charvaka, all these people have worked on it. Prototype theory, for example, which is closely analogous to linear algebra and vector spaces. Again, Bharatruhar has looked at network model concepts. If you look at symmetry, for example, the group theories are useful here. And it turns out that if you look at Vedic chants, some of the chandas, etc., there is some connections with all these kind of models. And there are some more deeper models about manifolds. And this is one thing which I think I don't see representation in Indian thinking here. The closest I can see is something about the way fingerprints are developed in India. Okay? again, if you're interested in some of these things, there is a book that has come out, as was mentioned. It is called the Computation Mean, which actually goes into some of these things in some depth. Again, as I briefly mentioned, I've just talked about the computation meme. I just briefly mentioned a few other related ideas that are part of this particular way of thinking. I think you must have heard about Panini. He actually had something called an expert system, one of the earlier models of AI. And it turns out that you have rules, and then you have some kind of data, and then you have some way in which you can derive the consequences and using some control. And so, for example, rules are, for example, you're defining Sarvanama, for example, right? And it tells you the rules, for example, and the data corresponding to is here. For example, these are all the various Sarvanamas, for example, like a Sarva, Vishwa, etc. So what I'm trying to say is that there was an expert system which was actually doing some of these things in the Panini system. And so these are an early example of what you might call as a early AI kind of system, okay? And it turns out that the Indian people are very good at what could be a good model for let's say, modeling complex systems, because some of you who might have heard about the Wolfram Physics project, they actually work on rule-based systems. Instead of rewriting rules on Sanskrit morphemes, they're rewriting rules on hypergraphs, okay? And they claim to have a lot of progress in modeling quantum mechanics, gravity, and whatnot, okay? And it turns out that there are many comparable issues, whether it comes to what is called termination issues. When do you stop, doing that computation to say that I'm done, okay? That part, or when I have parallel rules, when does what is the meaning of when I'm doing, the system is there, multiple places I can change the system at the same time. What does it mean to, let's say, when does it stop? What does it mean to say that you are in different parts of the system or in different states, what happens, okay? So all these kind of issues are also have been talked about or thought about in Panini's kind of system, for example, okay? And there's also what I would call a self-reorganization kind of thinking in Indian thinking. A good example I find is in Rasa theory, where you have what are called bhavas and rasa. And they say that the bhavas, when they become recurrent, then you get rasa, for example. And you can think of it as a two-level model. The bhavas at one level, which when you sort of refine it by repetition of some kind, then it becomes, I'm simplifying a bit too much, but I'm just mentioning that there's a circular aspect to it. And when it becomes recurrent, it becomes rasa, for example, okay? And you'll see it also in thinking like, for example, Aurobindo's thoughts, involution and evolution, for example. And so these are some, you can see that there is some depth in this Indian thinking when it comes to some of these complex systems, I guess. But I think skip some of these things. And last thing, one of the things I would like to say before I conclude is that in the current AI models, it turns out that you heard of deep learning I mentioned. There's also now something called large language models. And these large language models have certain problems. So now people are coming with what is called agentic models. Basically, you model a complex system as multiple agents, each model having certain capacities. And you figure out, basically, in some sense, the system improves by interaction between these agents. And if you look at our Vedic kind of model, it turns out that, for example, Rig Veda, or if you look at it closely, you'll see many intelligences. For example, Indra could be taken as an intelligence. And actually, Aurobindo talks about Indra as a thought force. And he maps each one of those Agni as a, as a will force, for example, okay? And basically, you can think of Rig Veda as an example of multiple intelligences which are interacting, okay? And you can see that this agentic meme in AI also is basically something similar. And I think that I find this particular model quite interesting, precisely because essentially what you're saying is that the reality is composed of many embodied intelligences, and the interaction is what actually we have to look at. And I think that the reason why the world is interesting is because these specific intelligences are giving you some capacity which you yourself do not have. For example, I myself cannot live without plants, for example. And the plants have a magic, like chlorophyll, for example. It does some quantum mechanical phenomenon by which it can actually extract the light from the sun, and it's able to convert it into something which I can use, okay? In a sense, for me, that is an example of embodied intelligence that is there in the system. And you can see it in case of other areas. And what is interesting to me is that in the Vedic system, the cows, Go, for example, of course, Go can, in Aurobindo's kind of thought system, it can mean both cows, of course, and also it can mean also a rays of light, okay? And so it turns out that the cows, if you think in the literal sense, they are, these ruminants have an amazing capacity to to digest cellulose is very difficult. That also is an amazing intelligence in some sense. And the reason why, let us say, the Vedic civilization is so much important in the cow is because it's doing something which is otherwise impossible for all practical purposes. And yeah, I just will conclude in 1 or 2 minutes. If you look at Gita, for example, there's a beautiful sloka here. It talks about the fact that you cherish the intelligence as gods. Okay. For example, I water the plants. They have some amazing intelligence, right? They're able to do something. You cherish that intelligence, and that intelligence itself will also cherish you. Okay. And this, I think you must have seen in Gita 3.11. Devan bhava tena anadeteva bhaventu. It's like, I think you know what this is. Okay. So basically, the mutual cherishing, okay, you reach higher levels of existence. Okay. So to me, it's an interesting way of thinking. And lastly, I just want to mention that a reason why this is cherishing of intelligence is important is because current AI kind of models, they're too expensive. Unless that amazing intelligence like chlorophyll, etc., is there, you cannot really be energy efficient in some sense. Okay. Because there is some magic that they have done. The quantum mechanical tunneling, whatever they have done, they are able to do something which is otherwise impossible for many other systems you can think of. And because of that, the world actually has done is more interesting or more amazing. Okay. And if you think about AI, for example, if you look at the current AI kind of models, if you try to see what the energy consumption is, it's going to be extraordinarily high. And because of that, it's not likely to be the, let us say, long-term, let us say, the way AI will actually work out. You need to do a lot more things to make it actually efficient. Okay? So I just wanted to mention that the cows are amazing from this point of view because there are 4 compartments precisely to make sure that this particular way of extremely high energy efficient way of converting cellulose into useful thing. It turns out they have 4 stomachs because the equation of going from cellulose to other things, there's some inhibition that happens, and you have to have multiple compartments so that this particular forward reaction can go in some direction. Okay, so it's, for me, what is interesting is that the Vedic thinkers chose a very good model. Like Panini chose a very good rule-based model, and Vedic people also have chosen a very good model about something which is actually sustaining long-term. Okay? So I think I'd just like to conclude here. I know I've gone over a lot of stuff in a rather quick manner, but I hope you got some high-level ideas that there's something interesting about Indic thinking. And the computational thinking that Indian tradition has got also is quite interesting and has got some amazing depth in it, because what we are saying right now in AI is sort of very close to what people who are doing current research in AI are doing. And therefore, I think this dynamic perspectives are quite worth exploring in some more detail. And I hope you'll find it interesting to think on these lines. Thank you.
Thank you, Gopinathji. So I think this sort of gives you the academic perspective of the way he thinks, index should be applied to the current problems, and the sort of larger perspective of what potentially Indian academics should, the trajectory for them to think about. So next, I'll call Acharya Ramanujamji to actually show what he has been doing in the real world, given his background from his background of a Vedic teacher and a traditionalist. So this will give, so just to give another deeper background. So the entire efforts at CDAC, Heritage Computing, were to actually build a parallel software story based on Sanskrit, right? So Ramanujamji was actually hired by Bhatkarji, who is the founder of Vibha. So building a supercomputer is fine, we have hardware, but what does it actually mean to build Indian software? Have you even thought about it? So he was part of the initial efforts in the early 90s to build all of that. So a lot of theoretical work has gone into that effort, but unfortunately or fortunately, the way we look at it, a lot of it has not actually been with support from industry, not of it actually happened. So if things were supported properly, probably would have had an entire Sanskrit-based OS, Sanskrit computing stack. We would be doing AI in Sanskrit today, probably. Right? So hopefully with the IKS efforts and building up on Swamin's efforts the last 3 decades, hopefully we planning to give a trigger of inspiration that what could potentially be a very game-changing approach to computing itself.
I'm here for a second time. First time was just to say what we should be doing for Sangananam is the kind of word we would like to use for lack of a better word. Actually, I had used the word called Mastishka Yantram. First time when I wrote this, I wrote it as a Mastishka Yantram. Then people said, no, it just calculations, it doesn't have any mind of its own. So mind yourself, that's what people said. Today, somehow, when AI is coming up, maybe we are trying to realize a Mastishka Yantra itself. My very first article published in 1987, maybe my IIT Kanpur, was Mastishka Yantra Shabda Bodha Pratirupanam. Shastras talk about understanding knowledge through interactions, through verbal interactions, and the listener's version of what the conversation is taken as authentic. If you have spoken something, if the listener has understood, and is it verified with the speaker, let us say, and he says, okay, you got me right, then the Shabda Bodha is the recipient's or the listener's version of the conversation. Now, the question was, in the case of Vedas, there is no author. Vedas are apaurushaya, they are eternal. They contain a lot of opinions, lot of ideas, lot of upadeshas, and we understand something. Whom to check it with? Have I got it right? This is the problem with the case of Vedas. If the Vakta is there, Vakta and Shrota, if they have the same understanding, then you have got it right. Now the Vakta is not to be found. How do you find out? That is the reason the theory of Shabdabodha came. It is only to help understand Vedic meanings. Or let us say an author is removed in time or space from us. Then also you read somebody's writing, you form some understanding out of this. How do you know this is what the original writer meant? If he is alive, if he is some other place, you can check with, that is one way. What happens to, let us say, what Ramanujacharya wrote or Shankaracharya wrote, and today somebody reads it, whether he gets it right or not. So from this point of view, if we want to become, say, Vishwaguru, Vishwaguru is one of the words being used by people. Bharat should become Vishwaguru kind of. Take away, what do you know yourself? That is where it begins with. You want to make others like you, provided you know what you are. And this is good, this is worthwhile in some sense. That is where the trouble comes up. Who am I? Becomes the question. It's not very easy to characterize somebody. So we have, of course, lots of hundreds or thousands of years of discussions and then writings, interactions, etc. Where has it led us is the kind of question. Anyway, I'll just skip some of these issues just that can be read, except that just one idea I thought it will come up. Is it not loading? Still, see, anyway, there was a picture that we had just written. In Sankhya, it is mentioned there is a lame person and a blind person. Each alone cannot do his job. Together, they can do both their jobs. So this is called Pangvandhan Nyaya. Pangu refers to. Pangu is a person who is lame, who cannot walk. Andha is a person who cannot see. Now, if this Pangu sits over the blind person who can walk, this person can guide him where to go, and both will reach where they want to go. So, Pangvandhavati Ubhayo Samsargaha. This is in the Sankhya Karika. So, from the very earlier days, it was accepted that a cooperative effort is needed in life. No one alone can achieve much, except maybe thinking. Beyond that, to realize something is not very easy. So, from this point of view, today what should we be doing? Let us apply the knowledge that we have got from Vedas to answer some questions. Now, some of the questions, anyway, I will put up some examples. It is hard just to mention how difficult it is. I'm just trying to use some important quotations. Then these are known, these are well known, Subhashitas, etc. And of course, I mentioned about the Mana Mayor has the Shloka Vartikam in the morning talk. We have taken much of this from his book, Lakshmi Ram Srinivasacharya's book, where he has organized knowledge into very nice categories, classifications, etc. Anyway, I will just take out a few examples. Maybe in 5-10 minutes, we should be able to get an idea. The Upanishads have certain words used. A person does annadana. It is equivalent to making Brahma Sakshatkara itself by a jnani. How does these two get related? Annena prana, pranayed balam, balena tapaha, tapasa shraddha, shraddhaya medha, medhaya manisha, manishaya manaha, manasa shanti, shantya chittam, chittena smritim, smritya smaram, smarena vijnanam, vijnanena atmanam vedayati. Anna leads to Atmanjnana. Tasmad annam dadan sarvan netani dadati. This is what the Upanishad has said. Array, you understand, you see Anna. Concentrate on that. But this Anna also is Brahma. Ahamannam, ahamannam, ahamannam. You ultimately reach even that stage when you become a mukta. Then also you call yourself as Anna. So Anna does not mean just rice or what is edible or what is eaten. This is something that is experienced. Now, a person's experience of satisfaction or bliss or happiness is what Anna leads you to. Now, how do we understand these words? If you have a very nice, very powerful AI machine also, can I distinguish between Shraddha and Medha, Medha and Manisha, Manisha and Manas, etc.? How does somebody classify this? How does somebody say you are at this stage? Step 10, then you have to go up to step 20. Okay, you graduated to 11, 12, etc. Who is going to say? And this is the essence of life. This is what Vedas have said. Words are there, yes, but the realization, how does it come up? So if we need to build something, it should have a human being in the loop. Is the Vedic kind of thinking. That is, a purpose should be attached. A machine, however powerful it can be, does not exist for itself. I used to joke, actually, people used to say, hey, machines can think. Suppose the machine tells you, I don't have the mood to work now, what will you do? You feed a program into the system, it says, I don't feel like working. Would you like such a machine? And what you are actually aiming means that it has its own preferences. It has its own thinking. I should do it or not do it. Or I want to mislead you. Then what happens? If the machine deliberately, if it gets intelligent, definitely it can mislead you also. Would you like such a machine? Would you spend money on this kind of stuff? It should be under your control. You should keep it under your thumb, but it should do all impossible things. Will it work? And why should it work? So the whole idea is when you talk about intelligence, unless there is a purpose, there's no point in trying to define something. What is the maximum purpose? One's own self bliss or happiness or elation, that is the maximum that somebody can define. Beyond that, one cannot define. Now, in such a case, Annat prana bhavanti bhutanam, pranayar manaha, manasasya vijnanam, vijnanat anandaha brahma yoni. This is what is called as Brahma. This is the ultimate stage. Can we have a machine to do this? Or can machine get moksha? This is the kind of problem. I am relieved of you. Chalo, I got my moksha. I don't have to work for you. Then what happens? So it's not very easy to define artificial intelligence. So, if that is the case, Upanishads have one single statement. Janatyeva ayam purushaha. A living being knows itself, knows himself. Use any gender, it doesn't matter. Himself, herself, itself, whatever. By very definition, Atma, used in the Upanishads, means that one who knows himself, one is self-aware. Now, the self-awareness, how does somebody model? But we have a very, very elaborate model of this given by Vedanta Deshika in his Tattva Kalap. But I started CDAC's work with a software we built called Deshika, based on the Tattva Kalapa. It has a very simple model. Even today, we have not been able to realize one of the aspects of it because we are guided by the world the way it is going. You need a processor. If that is the condition, the processor builder will decide what you will be able to do, what will be your limitations. We built, of course, parallel processing, lots of things in CDAC at the same time, and this was also happening. The trouble is, data structures or this kind of an approach is what is common in the computer science field. Data structures are insufficient to capture a living being. defining or characterizing a living being. This is not, it's not included in the loop at all. In the data structure system of computation, there's no human being in the loop at all. Now, the point is, Janatyeva ayam purushaha. I am aham asmiti. I am is Sanskritam here, not English I am. I am aham asmiti. I am this. When you say, you have some link with the body in which you are enclosed. And so, today, yes, I am a human being, or I am a man, I am a woman, I am a scholar, I am a rich person, I am poor, etc. You also have something that is not you, but then related to you, without which you will not be able to identify or do some work. But you are distinct in these two aspects. Idam, itham are the two things. Idam, itham is the entire pratiti or knowledge in the whole world. This is how the Vedas have defined something. But this knowledge of idam, itham goes to someone who is innately knowledgeable, innately conscious, and it does not come from outside. It can't be given to somebody. By the same logic, it can't be given to a machine. This is what an achetana and chetana have, by their own classification, cannot imbibe the other's quality. Chaitanya cannot be killed. Achetana cannot get Chaitanya. Now, Chaitanya is something I knowledge, aham. As the, in any language, somebody uses an ant knows about this, an elephant knows about this. It knows itself is something doesn't come from outside. Now, it also knows about other things. That is where the question is. How does this I know also about non-I things? I am in this environment, I am with this person, he is okay, not okay, this is fine, not fine, etc. So there should be two aspects. So the Vedas, to the exclusion of all other literature in the world, have these two aspects, Varna and Swara. This Varna has one of these aspects, Swara has the other aspects. Akara has got a Varna or an alphabet. It also has a Swara, Udatta, Anudatta, Swarita, etc. We can use it in different ways. Anudatta can be there, Udatta can be there, Swarita can be there. What does that change to the basic A? If you see in the first sutra in Siddhanta Kaumudi, when somebody starts with Vyakarana, Uchair Udattaha, Nichair Anudattaha, Samahara Swaritaha, then you find Bhattoji Dikshita explaining Uchaistva, Nichaistva, Swara Dharmo, Yatra Samakriyete, Swaritaha. This is the dharma or the aspect, attribute or whatever, quality of that single thing. So there is a dravya and there is a guna. This dravya and guna cannot be separated. There cannot be only guna without a dravya. By theoretical explanations, it has been proven nothing can be nirguna. It is not possible to have something without a guna, a dravya without a guna. Similarly, a guna without a dravya also is not possible. Now, computation does not take that into account today. So we had proposed, and I have been even trying to see even now how to realize. We have a model, what we call it as CVA model. The Upanishads have a very enigmatic statement. Nantah prajnam, na bahih prajnam, no vaitah prajnam, na prajnam, na prajnam. Prajnana ghana eva. It does not have only knowledge inside, only knowledge outside, or both, or neither. Whichever way, you will not be able to fully characterize at different times and different situations. Its action is similar to having this. Now, how does somebody model such a thing? So this is where AI is good to claim, but the I part of it, intelligence part of it, what do we actually mean, is going to be a complex issue. So, yes, sarvajnaha sarvavit, yes, jnanamayam tapaha. These are the Vedic statements. One who knows everything. He knows himself. He knows other things, not as him, different from him, then still knows about them. Otherwise, sarvajna, the sarva word cannot be used along with jnana unless there is something other than him. Now, in such cases, how do we actually proceed with modeling? This is where, okay, I have just given some sample statements. See, this is a simple sloka. Bhagavad Gita mentions this. Svashtas have. Uddhared atmanatmanam, natmanam avasadayet. Help oneself. Now, who is the helper? Who is helped? Both are the same. Atmana, atmanam uddharet. And what is your previous state? What is your final state? What is the instrument? How the change takes place? And how does somebody verify that you have reached the stage where you should have reached? Now, these are issues. How do we actually model this kind of? Natmanam avasadayet, never given to grief or despair or something. There is always hope. Self-help is the best help. And then self-help means what? Who is helping whom? These are the but this is used, this is helpful, there's no problem. But at the same time, to understand this is quite profound. So these are the kind of examples. Second, of course, this is normally used to teach good conduct. Whom do you interact with defines how you get shaped. This Sangha or the Sahavasa shapes a person. So an example is given. Take a drop of water, put it on hot iron. For example, this tawa kind of thing, you do dosa, etc. Just put, suddenly the sound is there, it just vaporizes, gone. Santapta ayasi samsthitasya payasaha namapi najnayate. Nobody even knows that such a thing existed. It goes away. It the same thing is put on a lotus leaf, same drop of water. It looks like a pearl. Muktakarataya tadeva nalini patra sthitam rajate. It looks like a pearl. It becomes a pearl if it goes into the swatyam sagara shukti madhya patitam. It goes into the oyster shell. It becomes a pearl also. It can go without trace. It can look like a pearl, can become a pearl. Self same single drop of water. Prayena adhama madhyama uttama gunaha samsargato jayate. This is given as an example to teach somebody. You mix with high people, pace people, you become Mukta himself. You just get released. Or you have Samanya with whom you will at least not lose something. May not gain much, but at least you will retain where you are. You won't even be known if you mix with certain kinds of people. So, Uttama, Madhyama, Adhama, to the same set of water drop. Then these kind of things are important for life, but then to get them into a model or into a mechanical system is not that simple. So these are the kind of, another case, of course, I'll just stop with this. This is by Bhartrihari, one of the very nice teachings in Niti Shatakam. He says there are two aspects of a person at any given time. What he is actually and what he thinks he is. Between these two, there is a difference. Now, how do we model this kind of thing? He says, Yada kinchit nyoham. When he knew very little, then I thought as though I know everything. Gadaiva madantha samabhavam. Like an elephant having mother, I was so proud of myself, I know everything. But the reality was I was kinchijna. I knew very little. But then I had the feeling that I know everything. Now, tada sarvajñosmi iti abhavad avaliptam mamanaha. My mind was thinking I am sarvajna, I am know all. But reality was I knew very little. And how did this reality dawn on me? And he said, I started meeting learned people, wise people. Yada kinchit kinchit buddhajana sakashad avagatam. When I interacted with better and better people, more endowed with wisdom than me, then I realized I know nothing. Now I lost my pride. Tada murkhosmiti. Now I realize I am a murkha in reality. So jvara iva madome vyapagataha. As though I had a fever of arrogance that left me. The reality is I am a murkha. But the actual paradox here is you are wiser when you think you are a murkha and you are arrogant when you think you are sarvajna. Now, to the same person, how do we actually model this? The one who thinks, the one who is actually realizing, and the change within him. State one of the same person, state two of the same person. State one has thought of, state one has existed. These are the ways someone has to put in. There is a common saying, young men think that old men are fools. Old men know that young men are fools. Now, what is the difference? Now, these are the kind of things about knowledge, about intelligence, if someone has to model, it's easy to build a skyscraper. Because there is something brick and mortar that is visible, that can be visualized, that can be experimented upon. Something that is so atomic within us, but which actually matters the most in the end. Atmarthe prithivim tyajet. This is what the Shastras say. In the worst case, for your own self, you can abandon the entire world. Well, you matter to you most. And where does computing help? Or if computing could help us at that stage, maybe Paramatma is the best computer. We don't know. He may be doing it with the computational precision, whatever he does. But if we need to, it is important to have cases where educational value, bringing in wisdom, are making more and more informed choices, considered decisions. That is where things should help. It's not easy because it is tough to initially characterize them. How do we characterize literacy, for example? We had Professor R. Narasimhan writing a book characterizing literacy. He was so much cut up with this UN saying the literacy missions and all that. He said, see, I see the Rangoli being put in front of the houses by the ladies. This is no less than very big level of computation. They don't have mathematical knowledge, they don't use equations, etc. But very intricate patterns are brought in so nicely, effortlessly, and each day differently. Is this not intelligent? And UN does not recognize means what? This is what he wrote. He also said the Ghanapatis, morning, of course, I mentioned today, the Vedic scholars don't know what they are saying, but they know what to say. This much if they know. The trouble is, there are a lot of patterns within that. The Ghanaparayana can qualify as intelligence at some level. Maybe this person does not know. Whoever made that system and then trained this person would know, kind of. Now, this can also count. Or he also mentioned about the architectural greatness of the Gopuras, etc., the Vimanas, the temples, architecture, etc. Thousands of years ago, no written records or no claims about, okay, I am this awardee, that awardee kind of thing. But still, that is helping everyone to this day. So, this is an area where there is a need, no doubt. But it's also so complex, also difficult. So, one has to do a lot of learning, churning, etc. Probably, yes, someday if we reach that level, we would have become wiser, definitely. Machine coming out effectively or not, that hardly matters. But in some guys, if you are able to go deeper into learning, understanding, characterizing about knowledge, that is worth. It's a Jnanavada, that is what he wrote, Lakshmipura Srinivasacharya. Jnana as an entity, as a concept, has been understood by different people differently. But what it essentially means is one's own self improving himself and trying to become better, evolve, or transform. So that it is possible itself is something to be considered. Something can be transformed, something can be better. There is never a doomed situation at all. Nobody is ever doomed. There is always hope and there is always possibility of transforming, improving. So these are things that should be necessary. So dharmic view tells you, know yourself first, then try to gauge others, judge others, etc. Even to teach somebody, how does an acharya teach? You should know you have a higher level of knowledge. The other person has lesser level of knowledge. He is interested in getting this knowledge. He approaches you, then of course you part with what you know. So even this process includes inherently this amount of realization. See, somebody goes to a guru, can he evaluate a guru? If he does not know he is a good guru, how will you go? There is also a paradox. See, now Narada came, Valmiki asked questions. At least Valmiki should have been clear within himself. Narada knows better than him, and Narada can satisfy his questions and answer them. So this Guru Shishya also includes this basic level of guiding someone who can be helped himself. So with this, I'm just wanting to bring in the Dharmika Drishti into the Sanganana. It is important. Vedas actually teach us this. And maybe there's no hurry. We can slowly but surely try to go the right way. The path is right. Someday we will read. I used the Biblical example in the morning. That will work. There's no problem. Thank you. And I think the others should also participate. Time must be running up. Sorry if I have taken more time.
Thank you, Swamin, for your, as usual, very enlightening and challenging presentation. So we'll have the final opinions from Dr. Madhu. So he's been doing AI in the industry and academia for last 3 decades. So currently involved in ideating multiple sort of usage of knowledge representation and AI in the commercial context in different domains. So we sort of will give you a perspective on what actually knowledge actually means. What does it mean in the perspective of AI? What does the whole, how can the Indian paradigm actually help you build products in the modern context, and the overall evolution of how sort of in the academia, in colleges especially, how we should look at computing, especially from an IKS drishti.
Namaste, everyone. I didn't prepare a deck, but I'll share a few comments. So this is based sort of the recent buzz around AI. What should India do with AI? Should we build Bharat LLM? There's a whole bunch of things that occupies. So the media discussions, and I know many universities and stuff are investing. I thought it was on. Okay, all right, good. So yeah, stepping back. So what I'm going to summarize is sort of, I started my AI journey in the early 90s. That was before AI became the buzzword. I worked on the first robotic vans, right? What you see now as Tesla or Waymo, which are the automatic driving systems now. Right? It's a 30-year journey, very different kind of learnings, and sort of the deeper thought has brought me back to our Indian knowledge systems, Vedic systems. I'll sort of quickly share a few remarks, I think, which are relevant to the audience and especially to the students. First things first. Firstly, from an AI perspective as portrayed today, right? We are talking about these large language models. So how far can we go with LLMs? Is even an LLM, would you consider it as intelligence, right? Does your baby process an LLM when it grows up? No, right? Now, second question, what is captured by, let me step back and sort of for people before I jump into LLMs. What is a large language model or what is a language model? Right, if I say the sentence, the sun is shining. The word, the sun is shining, 4 tokens, right? Each word, that's what the time makes it. The sun is shining. This can occur in many, many types of sentences and contexts. There's a probability of the word the is followed by sun followed by is followed by shining. The sun is dark, the sun is blue, right? I can change the last token, the meaning change. So there was, before large language models, there was this notion of language models, which would say the word the is followed by all these tokens and there's a probability. The next word is followed by this set of tokens. So you could compute, if I give the, what word will come next? It's the same thing that's used when you type in Google. Instead of at word level, if you do it at character level, it becomes a spell checker. Very simple, right? But these sentences have no notion of what the means, the is means, the sun means, shining means. Now, you can capture this and imagine a big graph. Phase 1 is all the other, all English words. Imagine the English vocabulary. Next layer, all the words. Next layer, all the words. This becomes a huge matrix. And the technological breakthrough in 2017, 2018 was, how do I represent this big matrix in terms of on a computing device, right? That's why you're using a GPU, you're using matrices, you can compute faster, blah, blah, blah. Now, the key question is, same old technology or same old model, new technology, you can compute faster, blah, blah, blah. Now, what happened is, okay, you're doing for the sun. If I take the world's, all the world's text and compute these numbers, these probabilities of given one word, what will come next, given 2 words, what will come next, that is what has been cracked the past 5 to 7 years, right? That's why you see this 3 billion parameters, 5 billion. What is a parameter? Is the link between one token and the next token, and what is the probability? I'm just laying this out very simply, but this is what it is. Now, when you step back, this is not what knowledge is. If I give you this big table, right, that is what is being downloaded, that's what is being shared, that is what is open source. There's some very fundamental constructs as I sort of went through some of my startups and we started using this in late 2022 and started building out things, right? Very simple first assumption, right? All the knowledge is text. All the knowledge is English text, right? That itself, a lot of questions when you ask, when it comes back with answers, whatever. How does it come back with an answer? What they call inference, right? Which Dr. Gopinath mentioned earlier. You given first word, get me the second word. Get me the, given the second word, get me the, it'll compute all of this and give you the highest probability. There may be many alternative answers, it'll pick you the highest one and give you. Now that probability depends on the words that you trained it with, the kinds of text you trained it with, right? So fundamentally, the notion of intelligence that they say it's AI is not intelligence, in my opinion. And it doesn't work that. So for us to model anything as we build our startups, and I'm doing this, taking a real world thing, first thing I have to take and write a lot of text about it. I have to write a lot of text, take the relevant text and load it into this machine. That itself is a multi-million-dollar enterprise, right? So when you step back, the key thing here is, first thing we need to realize is this is not knowledge. This is not intelligence. What it spits out, it's like, you might have heard the analogy, it's like a parrot. It'll come back with something. Next time you ask the same question, it may come back with something else, because in the interim, some new text has been added. So the probabilities change, something else came back, right? So this is where the state of the art is in terms of what they're calling AI. It's not that they don't know why. The other key thing is, before this, the reason to jump into this machinery of is the hypothesis, or let's say a dogma, that we can learn the world probabilistically, which is completely against our Vedic notion of what knowledge is. How many of you know where probability is used in our Vedic Shastras and Vedic? There's no probability. There's a little bit of use in specific context, but they're very specific to define what it is. I have references if you want, I'll share with you, but probability is not. Here, everything is probabilistic. So next question is, knowledge probabilistic? What Swamin mentioned just now, no, it is not. Our rishis and stuff have seen so many things and analyzed, right? How do you model? How do you capture all this? That's not being done. The assumption is the text reflects it. So I feed text in the reverse order, it's going to spit out that. Doesn't mean anything. So key takeaway is, the key is LLMs cannot model knowledge in the real sense. So one of the things we as educators and as researchers need to ask is, what can we really do with it? How do we proceed? Do we really want to invest time in this, right? So these are some fundamental things that's not been addressed. Now, the reason to jump into this was just a bit of history here. In the past, as Gopinathji mentioned, the rule-based system, right? There were rules to model the world. This was still about mid-90s. There was this rule-based systems for doing physics, rule-based system of chemistry, rule-based system of CAD, rule-based system for prospecting oil. What they wanted to get away from was, hey, I have to get these experts. As the knowledge changes, I cannot find experts to update these rules. So let me go the other way, where I model data and the machine can learn, infer some patterns and spit it out, right? Which is what led to machine learning, data science, all this. Basically figuring out relationships between parameters. Now the key question is, even to capture that data, you're naming something. You're naming, okay, this is the age of a person. How did you decide it's called age? Right? That is assumed, that is not considered symbols. That is not considered a symbolic system. But you get some structure, then I can do ML. So it's sort of a mix of symbolic and probabilistic system. I give you another analogy. Many of you would have sort of come across this in high school, right? Kepler's data, right? Or Tycho Brahe's data, or whichever one, right? You had all these columns of measurements he had made. How did he infer t squared by r cubed is constant? What was that leap? Did he do some machine learning? What did he do? Right? It's not described in the history, but how do you go from those data tables to figuring out a relation? You need a human in the loop, right? Somebody to guess at the right functional, say plotted it, they saw ellipses, whatever it is, right? So to me, the key point is going down the path of LLMs, building Bharati LLMs, all that by itself. Now, the bigger question is, should we build LLMs in which language? Should we do English? Should we do Sanskrit? Like Swamin mentioned just now, maybe a Sanskrit LLM, right? We do not know yet. There's lots to do in this space. We're in early days of this whole LLM thing. That's sort of one issue. What should how is LLMs and all this relevant to me? As an AI sort of scientist, researcher, product developer, whatever. Second thing, right? As I said, that's at the sort of the structural level. Second thing, what do the words mean? An English word means so many things, right? How do I model the meaning, right? Is the sun shining? Sun where? Is it implicitly on Earth? Is it implicitly on some other planet? What is the context? A lot of these things are missing. So a lot of these AI systems, I don't know how many of you use Perplexity and other search engines. By the way, the search engine was the first system where you never got the right answer. You got a lot of answers. The owners of correct answer depended on the person using the search engine. So this has been taken to the next level. Now, when the answer comes back from an LLM, how do you know what is the right answer? You don't know. The owners again push back on the user. So building systems with these kind of components, LLM become very, very complex. That's one side. But they do not capture meaning. Fundamentally, they do not capture meaning. And this has been a big problem in AI systems for the past 40, 50 years. How do I model anything? right? There's no link to the words used, the semantics. That structure, the English language or all the other Western languages do not have, other than Sanskrit. But as Swamin mentioned, there's a deeper structure from the sound, to glyph, to all these, there's a structure which we need to build. Long ways to go. But that whole thing of capturing knowledge, all of that is sort of open pathways for people to work on, right? So stepping back, bigger comment is the following, right? See, and the LLM engine doesn't do some complicated math or something. Many of you have learned Newton-Raphson in school. This is the first sort of equation where we learn iteration and how to solve the zeros of a polynomial if it cuts the x-axis, right? It is Newton-Raphson at scale that runs behind an LLM. It's done in terms of transformers, matrices, all of the new names, but it's the same algorithm, which is called gradient descent. Converge down till you hit the zero. Nothing else, right? It may have new forms, new shapes, all of that stuff, but this is all there is. So the key question is human intelligence solving a regression function? No, there's far more to it, right? How do you name the world? What is important? What is not? How it is, right? All of this doesn't exist. So the reason I'm saying this the reason I'm saying this is building AI, we have a long ways to go. We have barely scratched the surface. Where it has worked is in the world of signals and signal systems, where even images and stuff and that thing, right? You Google photos, you can replace. When you have a structured representation in binary, zeros and ones, I can transform it in certain way. Now, if I change that binary code to a ternary code or a quaternary code, right? Instead of representing 2 bits, I use 3 bits, whatever it is. The whole game will change. We haven't explored that. There's still lots to do in that. How do I do multi-valued logic instead of binary logic? Right? It was mentioned again by Gopinathji in one of his slides. So there's a lot of open areas where the Indian way of thinking, our traditions, our literature can help, because we are never constrained by these things. Our rishis and stuff have laid all this out in many ways. We have to go find the source literature. If need be, learn Sanskrit and dig it. Right? Otherwise, you're just thinking in one way. Right? So this is very important to sort of say every problem is solved. No, it's not solved. Right? So I want to sort of say that very importantly, because a lot of students I talk to say, oh, this is already done. We download some code and run it. Oh, the code doesn't mean anything. We have to step back and ask ourselves, does it really actually make sense? And the couple of other points. What else? The other thing, like Swamin mentioned, the notion of self-awareness. So AI as a technologist, one thing, very little has been done in terms of cognitive science, understanding meaning. How do you, right? What does it mean? What is meaning? How do you map it to a sound? How do you map it to a sentence? How do you map it to a token or a word, right? Different language, if you look at the evaluation of language, different cultures have done different things. If you look at Turkish, there's no spacing. It's one big chunk of tokens. Right? And how it's parsed depends on the community in Turkey which uses that or speaks that. Right? Again, all of this have cultural themes in it. There's lots to do. Right? For us, Sanskrit as a structure provides us a framework to sort of model. There's consistency. It doesn't change. It has not changed for thousands of years. It's not going to change. Right? Our dictionaries are fixed. Meanings don't evolve. All of that stuff. So we are sitting on a rich legacy of knowledge that we can use to sort of actually build. I believe the first real AI system is going to come out of India. Right? Couple of two more comments and I'll stop. The other thing, as Swamin was saying, stepping back, when I look at all the Vedas, you should see it as, right, a GitHub of human knowledge. There's lots to go and look up. We still need to build the search engine to go look at that stuff. But it is like a basic GitHub. We have had it for years, centuries. We need to go figure out how to use it, what to do, learn the structure, and then use it properly. Right? And the other thing is, every karma, every shloka, every step is like a mini program. Right? You execute the program, you get the result. Right? So it's very important to see how our rishis have thought of this in a very computing sense, with the goal of being whatever, right? What do you want? You want moksha, whatever you want, specific phala in this world, whatever. So that sense of computing is innate in all of us. That's why Indians are doing well in programming, all of this stuff. So that's the way we think. That's the way we process information. Right? But we step back and see, instead of just following the Western models, what should we do indigenously? We can use that technology, but the whole modeling layer is completely up to us. And I bet you in the next 10 years, many people are going to show up here in India to figure out all this. Hey, have people modeled how What is self-awareness? All of these things are coming up as I talk about computers and AI agents to be ethical, biasless. This is all being programmed externally. For the bigger sense, it's going to happen pretty soon, right? So I'll leave you with that thought, lots to do. And sort of I encourage all the students, researchers, everyone to sort of step back and mine our rich history and tradition of Indian knowledge. So much, hopefully sort of we'll achieve something in the next 20, 25 years, but there's lots to do. Best of luck. Thank you, everyone.
We could do a lot more discussions, but we are constrained by time. I'll just ask Ganti Murthy ji so that we can do much more stuff. One question you can ask him directly. And then we sort of finish Comparative, and lots more to discuss here, lots of research, lots to do. And I hope we get more opportunities to sort of communicate this. We're all part of another NGO called Vedavapi. We've been doing this for about 20 years. So you can look us up and engage with us in different ways. So yeah, anyone wants to ask a question, ask a question. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. That was the panel on computing Bharatiya Drishti. We'll have the felicitation now. The felicitation of all the panel members will be done by Professor Ramanathan Ji from IIT BHU. May I request you, sir? So first, we would like to felicitate Mananiya Acharya Ramanuja Mahodaya. Followed by Professor K. Gopinath Ji. Followed by Dr. Madhusudan Ji. Followed by Dr. Sudarshan Ji. Thank you, Mahodayaha. Now, our next session and the final session will be valedictory function at 3 p.m. So after lunch, I request you all to assemble here at 3 p.m. for the final valedictory. Thank you.